City Hall. Two of our council members were able to go along and kind of see the progress over there, so, biggest problem right now is the mud pile between here and the library, between the library and City Hall that they're working around because, rain hasn't been too good to them, but, they're working around it, and I think they said they were a few days or maybe a couple of weeks behind, but they're still substantial completion by May the 5th, I think, what they talked about today. So I think they're moving along pretty well. So it's just nice to go by there almost daily and see something different happening. So next up then we have a request for a flower stand, and Lauren's here tonight, and Brittany, you want to kind of lead into that, and then Lauren, you can come on up if you like up to this table here, and then we can kind of hear your proposal and kind of see where we want to go from there.
Right up here?
Yeah, right. Yep. Well, that's Brittany.
Hi, so Lauren, is the owner of Fiddle Leaf Fig, and she's in search of an area to place her flower stand. She's requesting approval to place a seasonal self-serve stand on Jackson Street, on the side of the Cardigan Building, which is located at 101 North Main. So the request is governed by the following codes that I have in the packets. It's section 136.2 and 136.21. So I will let Lauren go ahead and, yeah, Dan will pull up your.
Okay, great. So basically I started a little side business, started with houseplants and now I'm kind of working into flowers. My parents have a farm south of town, and my dad has been a farmer for years. His parents were farmers, and I have the opportunity to take about a 1/4 acre and start a flower farm off of there. And so I am wanting to bring some of that into town. I'm with being a self-starting business, I'm basically wanting a location that brings something back to our town as well. Main Street, we have such a great Main Street, a lot of character. And so I'm wanting to kick off a flower stand, and I have a couple of pictures, we'll get to those here in a couple of minutes here. But, basically, I'm just wanting a place downtown, the heart of our town, to be able to manage and bring farms, and I have approval from the owner of Cardigan. So my main thing is that I will maintain all of it. I'll make sure that it is designed to comply with city codes and ordinances, safety, accessibility, and overall appearance of Main Street. My goal is to add a welcoming, vibrant touch to the downtown area while supporting local community events and increasing foot traffic. I'm anticipating this to be a self-serve stand, although I am also open to having certain hours where I am there while I have flowers stocked. So, yeah, and if you go to the next slide, I do have a couple of pictures of kind of the idea of what I was thinking of. So this is kind of where that table is to the left of the window is kind of where I was anticipating putting some type of stand. And then that's kind of a mock-up of what I kind of had in mind. So, from my understanding, it has to be within 2 feet in depth. It sounds like if I need to anchor the stand to the wall somehow, I could do that. Again, the stand has not been built, so I can be flexible on how to make that happen too. So
I think Lauren, where you finished,
yeah, yep, for the moment, yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I think just finding the right location for,
Yeah.
you know, and Brad, you can jump in too, but you know, you have ordinance where people cannot have things outside of the building unless they own the building. So that's the only fly in the ointment here. But I think that, you know, I think we'd like to find you someplace to be able to do this, because I think you're right, this would be a great addition to our downtown. And, you know, I don't know where that, maybe it's across the street in the Lions Club Rose Garden, which is owned by It's not city property, but it's not right away.
It's city property that the Lions have an agreement for occupancy.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be on a right away, so maybe that, I don't know, I'm just
Okay.
throwing out ideas.
Yeah,
I
and
think
if
that's-
anyone has ideas, cause it seems that the ideas that I've had so far, it's come every time it's been oh, that one doesn't quite work because of this code, so I'm definitely open for ideas if
Yeah.
anyone has suggestions.
Have you tried the city improvement association?
I
They
have.
own the parks in the town.
Okay,
The Racewell Park is right across the street from where you're looking, but they own by Bend, they own a lot of nice, well located parks
okay,
in the downtown, so, afterwards I can put you in touch with somebody with city improvement.
So here's a couple of thoughts I had. If we strictly went by the city code, we would not have a lot of things. Including our parklet, which we don't have a current ordinance for, it seems to be working out very well. We're trying that on I think a 6-month basis, correct, before we come back and look at that again.
I think we have a 3-year contract, I think we're gonna review it after this year. Yeah.
Right. But here's an opportunity to beautify the downtown area and could the owner of Cardigan come up here, please? That business has invested a lot of money into that building, so let's say title building that it was. It's a very attractive building. What caught my eye here is there's currently a table and chair out there, and that's usually out there most of the spring and summer and fall, and take it back in, so. Can somebody explain what the difference of that table and chair to, if the dimensions of your stand match that?
I think the difference is it's owner occupied.
Okay, so if the owner of Mara said, I'm putting up a flower stand instead of you. Okay. Is that allowed?
That'd be a
It would need
grand
council approval.
Okay,
It would need a,
so.
anything that's
turning
when-
point for-
that's not temporary would require council approval.
Okay, so,
So even though really, I mean. We would have to look through the smoke and mirrors, it's really Lauren's business that Tiffany's now saying it's her business.
Can I ask a question? And Brad, maybe I'm,
I'm not being,
no, I
Yeah.
understand it, but
Brad, maybe I'm missing it in the two code sections that have been highlighted here. Is there somewhere that specifically says it must be the owner of the building that's using the 2 feet of sidewalk? Am I
No,
just,
no, and I agree, there's some wiggle room there. The two code sections that are applicable are the ones that Brittany put in
okay,
the packet. So we spoke with John, before he left for vacation, and there's nothing that would outlaw a third party from utilizing that space, but he said, no, my opinion is the intent of the code is that it's reserved for the adjoining property owner. So I do think there'd be potentially some wiggle room there. Do you want to open up the door where you're allowing third parties to use Main Street sidewalk?
Well, it would all still, be up to the council to allow it anyway. Nobody could just arbitrarily set up there
Correct.
and I would assume at that point, the council would take into consideration whether the owner that occupies that space. You know, in this case, that their owner is giving them permission for this to happen, so I don't really see any liability or any illegality to letting this happen.
I totally understand the idea of being, really cautious about someone who's not an owner, utilizing the sidewalk. I guess maybe what gives me pause is that if there's wiggle room in the code, then maybe an adjustment to the code one way or the other is what's needed as well. Like, because if somebody could read this and say, I'm gonna go put something on the sidewalk, it doesn't say that you either need the owner's permission. I mean, the next statement does say you need written permission from the council. but,
Exactly. Which would solve that problem,
It-
so.
Yeah.
something added that said, written permission of the owner would fix the other problem.
So that way it's really clear in both.
So then somebody can just go plant it in front of somebody else's place.
Business, exactly.
I guess the only thing I'd say is stop and think a little bit here that, you know, I have to worry about setting precedents. This is a pretty
Yeah.
innocuous request, but you're still setting precedents for something else down the line, so. I just want to caution everybody on that.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that's why, I would really only feel more comfortable with it if there was some change to that language, so that way somebody didn't say, well, you let somebody else do it, and future councils had to say, well, why did they? If it was clear in there that it was owner permission and council, 2 layers of permission would have to be achieved.
Well, I think that's, I mean, I think that's something council would evaluate. I don't think council would approve that
Yeah.
without the owners.
Right.
Yeah.
Knowing that the owner's on board with the request.
It says a written permit, is that something, I mean, it's something we could add on to the permit, was owner's signature.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make it, and then it would come to council, kind of like street closure requests and those things.
Yeah.
That would be the more simple way. to do it.
Correct, and
Yeah.
then it would be right there for you guys, all in writing, and
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of a policy question than a legal question. It's, again, do
Right.
you want to allow stands from third parties on the sidewalk on Main Street? I mean, that's a that's a council policy decision.
Have we had a recent request, similar request that was not free?
I don't think I've ever seen a request like this come
no,
across.
it's not happening.
Well, we did have a lot of discussion when they wanted to put those picnic tables outside of his business, and we said, you can do that because it's your business. So there was a lot of discussion of that at that time.
For the parklet itself.
Well, before he did the park, when he just put the table, picnic tables outside on the sidewalk itself.
Yeah.
We had that discussion and we said, well, it is your business, so yeah, I think that's fine if it's. But that doesn't mean we can't change and say, if it's somebody else's business that the owner agrees to. Even though it's a public sidewalk, I can't just put it up anywhere, but if the owner, I think it's, because this wouldn't happen until spring now, probably, right?
Right, yeah, we were kind of thinking, start kick off at Chick Fest.
So
Close to October.
how's that gonna be secured? Are you gonna have stuff sitting there 24/7?
Nope, so flowers typically do best in the morning, so it would be a stock in the morning. I don't know if I would do it every day or if it would be certain days of the week, but it would be listed, posted on social media and give updates that way. More than likely, I would be consistent on what days of the week.
And then you pick up anything that hadn't sold by
Yep.
noon or something?
Yep,
But the
absolutely,
stand itself would stay there
Yes.
24/7?
for the
So I
season.
guess I'm thinking. Would we want to make sure that was secured some way so that a windstorm comes up, somebody's walking by and wind catches it, blows it over? I mean, I think we need to make sure we have that covered.
Yeah, I mean, when we issue certain permits, we can include conditions or requirements within the permit, that is issued under these circumstances or conditions, so.
I applaud you for thinking out of the box
Thank you.
and helping beautify downtown. So my question is, where do we go from here?
I think where we go from here is we talk to staff and see what we need to do in an ordinance to. It sounds like maybe it's allowable, not just for Lauren, but for anybody come along, but maybe has some criteria in there that they. So, you can't just go put up a stand anywhere you want to, that there's some criteria, so I think we work on that. So that when spring comes, you're all set and ready, long before spring comes, you're all set and ready to go, either yes or no, and it sounds like from the discussion I hear tonight that there's a pretty strong opinion to have it be yes, so I just think we need to figure out the proper way.
That sounds great.
So the owner of Cardigan, any other comments?
No, I think we were just kind of discussing that, there might be like a time, associated with this, or it might say, the season of April through October of 2026, and then the following year it would be reapplied, or I don't know, whatever you create, if we would need to come back and have that permit renewed or how that would work, but we probably have that discussion annually.
Yeah, because you would want to do that as the owner of the building.
Right.
But I know, like I said, I know with Clark Lett, we gave him a 3-year permit, but we also said we're gonna evaluate it after the first year and see if, because the permit had, either party could get out of the agreement with a certain amount of notice, so. It'd probably be a similar thing that we would give a permit for, we'd have to decide, again, that'd have to be one of the things that would be decided as how long do we want to do this for? Is it 1 year, is it 2 years?
If they're gonna have an annual discussion, I don't think we'd wanna commit to anything more than an annual discussion.
Yeah.
I think that, the idea is really interesting. I think we just have to, as Delane had mentioned, approach it carefully so that we don't throw future councils under the bus. But it does make me think, and I think I've mentioned this to Mark, like some business incubator space in town would be really, really fabulous. And this, I think, highlights the need for that so that small business owners can access space to test out running a businesses. So, that would be an interesting thing to see in the future too.
I think we're at this point, we'll keep in contact and see, how about we can figure out that we share needs and our needs both. And, we'll move forward.
Okay.
Sounds
That sounds
like
great.
it's promising, so.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a nuisance discussion with staff, and I know Chief Anderson and Brad have both been working on this. John's out of town, vacation, but Bill them can kind of take the discussion here, and I'll let you guys just kind of start off with what we want to present.
Let me share this. Right. I included an outline, as the AIS for the discussion tonight. My plan is just to kind of go through that outline, primarily focusing on our ordinances and explain to staff the more common issues we see and how we try to address those issues.
Sorry, Richard, I should invite you up too, sorry.
Is that blurry for anyone else? There's my.
It is, yeah, it's not this nice.
We tried earlier, and you can try again if you want, but
Or mess it up.
the big projector died
Okay.
today, so we're on a little.
I was about to do the same thing, hop up and.
I mean, you can if you want,
No,
because I'm
no,
not
if
tech
you-
savvy, so.
You're the teacher. Get up there.
I
So
know.
you deal with all types of nuisance scenarios. The most common we probably deal with are junk or garbage and junk vehicles, and those are probably the ones that council gets the most complaints on, I would assume. But our code, chapter 50, has about 12 conditions that constitute nuisances, and then 50.03 has 5 other separate subchapters that are also covered by the process we follow in chapter 50. So I'm gonna start with junk and junk vehicles. It's very complaint driven, so generally what happens is code enforcement will get a complaint for a particular address that they have nuisance conditions at the property. Richard will put that on his schedule and investigate, take pictures, try to make contact with the owner, make a determination as to whether it is actually a nuisance condition under our ordinance. If he does feel there are nuisance conditions that need to be addressed, sometimes that can be accomplished informally, just with a discussion with the owner. Yeah, we realize we have issues here, we'll get it cleaned up within a week. Sometimes it can't be addressed informally. And that's when we start our formal nuisance abatement process. And that involves code enforcement preparing an order to abate, a formal order to abate that's signed by code enforcement. informally served on both the occupant of the property and the owner of the property. And that gives them a reasonable amount of time to address the abatement of the nuisance conditions. Usually we provide 10 days in the order, but if they're working on it and there are improvements being made, we'll informally give them a little more time to address that rather than having it turned over to my office to start formal proceedings. If the nuisance conditions aren't abated through the notice that's provided by code enforcement, Richard will take additional pictures, or code enforcement officer will take additional pictures, and they'll send me the packet that they have that says, here's the condition from when we first investigated, here's the order to abate, here's proof of service, here's the pictures we took the other day. Go ahead and start legal action. And the legal action involves filing a municipal infraction with the court. It's a formal civil citation. It requests a fine against both the owner and the landlord. And we serve, or excuse me, both the tenant and the landlord, and we serve both of them with that citation. Once they're served, it's a legal proceeding, they have 20 days to respond. Basically file an answer or response to that citation. If they don't file a response, the court will give us an order, which in what we request from the court is we request a civil fine. We request authority for city officials to go onto the property and actually abate the conditions ourselves, so remove the junk or garbage. It's a lot more challenging with junk vehicles, but if it's just garbage or junk, we can go on and abate the nuisance conditions. And then we request authority to then assess those costs to the property in the same manner as property taxes. And then we've also started including a request that if the owner or tenant are in violation of our nuisance ordinance again within the next 12 months, that we can file an application with the court and ask them to be held in contempt for violating the court's order. So we include all that in the order that the court issues. If they file a response and the court sets for hearing, and it's essentially a mini trial where code enforcement officer shows up, we present our evidence to prove that nuisance conditions exist. The defendants have the opportunity to present whatever evidence or defenses they feel are applicable, and then the court will make a ruling. And if they rule in our favor, we request those same things that I just went through be included in the order. I don't know what percentage is resolved without my office being involved, but it's the vast majority are resolved without formal legal proceedings, either informally or through the order to abate being served on the owner. So chapter 50 again is our nuisance abatement process, and then 51 deals with junk vehicles, and essentially it just provides, sorry, it's kind of hard to see there, but it provides the definition of junk vehicle. And again, those are a little more challenging to deal with, because the owners always argue, hey, it's not a junk vehicle, we're working on it. It's registered, and unlike trash, we can't really, it's difficult to send someone onto the property and have a government tow someone's car away and store it.
Just real quick, Brad's continuing on. Richard has done this for a lot of years down in Mississippi before he came with us, and he came with some great ideas that the three of us discussed, so we'll probably be looking at coming and changing small things. I don't know if you're gonna get to that, Brad.
Yep.
On the ordinance, and one of them is the junk vehicle definition, just make it a little bit easier.
So I guess that's kind of an overview of the ordinance pertaining to, again, that's strictly dealing with personal property, junk, garbage, and junk vehicles. We also have process we follow for grass, cutting grass, removing snow from the sidewalk. Those are much shorter, it's a much shorter process to deal with mowing grass and removing ice and snow from the sidewalk. Any questions on that before I go to talk about dangerous buildings?
I just have one question. So if the person filed an infraction and they want to contest it, what's the time frame from when they say they want to contest it till it's resolved in the court system? Is that where we get bogged down?
Yes, yep, yep. So they have 20 days to respond. A lot of times they don't respond till the last minute. They'll file an answer on the 19th day before judgment's entered. And then the court sets it for hearing. Most of the time, we're probably 6 weeks out from a hearing, 8 weeks out from a hearing. And so, yeah, that really slows the process down.
And then they don't come back with their response. The magistrate may not actually come back with their order for some time after that also.
Yeah, so we'll have a hearing and usually the judge doesn't issue an order that day. She's got a number of other cases she's, taking under consideration, so it can take an additional week or two before we get an order for decision.
Because I think that's where a lot of concern comes from citizens. It's like, that's been there for 2 months. Yeah, we're working on it.
Yep.
And I think that's what I think what I need to hear is, what is the time frame? So when we say we're working on it, do we mean 2 weeks? Do we mean 2 months? Do we mean 6 months? What do we mean when we say we're working on it?
Yep.
So during the COVID time, obviously, everything took a slow train. And we were looking at, some of them were almost a year out. We were looking at 8 to 9 months at times during that. That became very frustrating for citizens. It became very frustrating for us as an office also. Because in that time, maybe it got abated, maybe it didn't, hopefully it did, and we go to court, it's all taken care of, or it got worse in that time period, so.
And what I would say the main thing that is helpful for us, for code enforcement is, if you see an issue, report it to code enforcement, because it'd be great if we had code enforcement who could just patrol looking for nuisances. But Richard handles building permits, they handle rental registration and inspections, so it's part of his duties, but he's not just driving around looking for nuisances, so it's very complaint driven. So if citizens have a complaint and they want to report to code enforcement, we encourage them to do that.
Well, my question is to Chief here, is that something that your officers can do it as well as they're patrolling, if they see a nuisance? Can they issue a citation, or can they, take the report maybe and report it to code enforcement? How does that work?
So we can't issue a citation. It's not a criminal, this is a civil matter here, so we can't issue a citation as an officer. But what we can do, and, these guys can probably attest, not so much Dan's right now, and maybe not even Brittany, but what we do is I encourage every department head to have their people out looking, and the street departments drive around, they call them into us. Richard can attest that he gets officers walking over and telling him, hey, I just went to this house, the yard was trash, and he takes care of it. So it's not something that we take care of as officers, but yeah, we do, we're the eyes and ears, we're out there more than Richard is, we're going to these calls, so when we get to a house and the house next door is bad, what I actually do is I actually take pictures at that time, if I'm not dealing with something, that's has to be dealt with right away, I'll take pictures of that house and then pass them on to code enforcement, and the same with the rest of the officers, so. Okay.
Does that include the vehicle that's parked on the city right away?
It does not. That's completely different than a nuisance call. That's covered under zoning code. So we talked about, so I'm gonna bring you a rewrite of a lot of the city code. And I plan on hopefully doing that between January and February. Trudy and I were working on it before she left, and she dumped it all in my lap. But there's gonna be quite a few things, so that's one that's actually addressed in there. So we'll make it easier to address it, and officer can just write a citation or a parking ticket at that time. So thanks for bringing that up, though.
It is addressed in our code, it's just not under the nuisance umbrella, as far as you can't park on your yard.
One concern, I think this goes back to the mayor's comments, when right now in this discussion, we're only focused on junk vehicles. But I can tell you, in the last 2 weeks, I've probably looked at 100 different city ordinances. Junk vehicles, a lot of them stipulate 30 days. if that vehicle hasn't moved in 30 days, Google has a good opportunity to classify that as a landmark. So, and that's an embarrassment. So if we're going to update the junk vehicle ordinance, to go back to your point there, I mean, if a vehicle is sat for greater than 30 days, not moved, okay, or 5 vehicles in the front yard are sitting there for greater than 30 days. If you drive around town, you'll see that today. That's what, for junk vehicles, I would like to see addressed in the updated ordinance.
And we do have that.
Our current one says
You have
7
30
days.
days.
Well,
It says 7.
well, no, so what I included in the packet was reducing that time
Oh.
period, so
That's the
to,
recommendation.
but we do have in that subsection E that it can be considered a junk vehicle if it's not been moved under its own power for a period of 30 days. So if we have proof that it hasn't been moved from the spot it's located in for 30 days, we could consider that to be a junk vehicle right now under our existing ordinance.
Okay.
But I think we could, like you said, there's other city codes,
They're doing a
That
lot
are-
stricter.
yeah, that are fewer than
I'd
30.
like to entertain that discussion.
It'd be good to have that discussion, but I'd also like to know from those communities how they enforce that and what their luck is when they go to court. Because from what I can recall, and I see it in our ordinance and other ordinances, there's a nice little line in here that it's constitutes a threat to the health and safety of the citizens and is a nuisance within the meaning of section whatever of the Code of Iowa. And it seems like a lot of times when we've taken stuff to court, you know, it's really hard to prove that that's a threat to health and whatever else, and somebody's kingdom is their castle and things like that. Which personally, I don't agree with how one person's rights can offset the rights of all the neighbors around there.
I agree.
But that happens to be the legal system that we're trying to operate with them. So.
Yeah, and I don't think we filed any citations under that particular section that I can recall. It's usually, you know, pretty obvious that it's a junk vehicle beyond the fact that it just hasn't been driven for 30 days. It's usually pretty, when we're prosecuting, it's usually pretty clear that it's a junk vehicle.
Yeah, the junk vehicles, but the junk in the yards and stuff, I know in the past, maybe before your time, but I know we had some issues trying to prove that.
Sure.
We had some hesitation. I don't know if we ever had any issues. We
Yeah,
had some
there's-
hesitation to proceed because of that argument.
Sure. Yeah, and the other recommendation, we're skipping around a little bit, but we do have another recommendation in there that which we saw in a few other ordinances regarding outdoor storage. And it,
We would welcome the lessening of that from 30 days.
While Brad pulls that up, it sounds like really kind of the upshot on some of the nuisance is that this is a team effort. It's not just department heads, but the community as well. And that it's a slow process, which is what frustrates, I think, everyone, including community members, because if you see the nuisance, you aren't seeing the progress, although it's slow, being made on the office end of things, like dealing with it and pushing it through. So patience is maybe key here, and knowing that we don't have a huge code enforcement department. I mean, we're looking at it, right? And so, it will all take time, and it takes a community effort to report it and patience to wait while everything goes through the whole necessary process. So it's time. It's just.
Yeah, you're completely right. One of the things I enjoy though is when Richard, or at the time Michael, would go to a property and he'd ask him to clean it up.
Mhm.
And I would go by literally a couple days later, and on my way to work, a lot of times, you guys may see me driving down your street because I come in very early. So I drive down the street, so I maybe take a picture or anything, but I'll go by and I'll be like, I'd come in and be like, Michael or Richard, I say, man, did you see this house? I guess I won't name an address, but there's a house that's been completely covered in trees, the grass has been 2 foot tall, everything else, and I went by the other day and I was so excited, I said, Richard, they took care of that. He goes, Yeah, I went and talked to him. And he's all matter of fact, you know, but we've been dealing with this house on and off for a long time, but literally him just going and talking to him sometimes does it. So sometimes it doesn't take a long time.
Yeah.
But the people who maybe, you know, they've been through it before, or they're sort of anti-government, they're gonna take longer. And those are the ones a lot of times that we're seeing, but so many times it's just good to know that just talking to the people can make a big difference. And we've also seen when one house or one yard gets cleaned up, the one next door is right away, so.
Speaking to that, and that maybe it's part of the long-term thing, you get it cleaned up, a month later, it's back where it was initially. Do you have to start over from the beginning, or is it like the lawn mowing thing where we issued it to you once, we could go back in now and do it quicker?
Yeah,
Normally we, oh, go ahead, you can.
we're trying to address that with the provision in the order that if they're in violation again in the next 12 months, we could seek to hold them in contempt.
You see, but
We could seek to hold them in contempt of court, which basically means they get served by the sheriff. They have to show up to the court and explain to the court why they're disobeying their order, and the court can impose more fines.
But if it's one that we informally just went and spoke with, it never ended up in the court system, then we do have to start over the process again. Sometimes we don't. You can be creative and say, hey, you didn't get it all the way cleaned up, now you added more junk, because we never saw it get all the way cleaned. A lot of times what'll happen is they'll start to clean it, and then junk days come on, even though we're sort of taking care of that issue now with going out to Shaw Avenue, and then it'll fill up again. So then we can continue on from there, because a lot of times junk is moved around the property, so we'll take the initial picture, and then you'll come back and you're like, hey, it looks like they moved stuff, well, it's all piled over on this side of the yard instead of this side, so.
that's what I hear a lot of. Yeah, they cleaned it up, but now it looks worse than it did before they cleaned it up.
Yeah, and if we don't have that formal order, you know, if they get it, like, use it, if they get it cleaned up, but we haven't had any formal proceedings against them, and it gets bad again in 6 months, it's restarting the process. Or if we get, you know, over a year into, which we do have a lot of repeat offenders, but usually it's 2 years pass or 3 years pass, and it becomes a problem
And it starts
again,
over.
as opposed to immediately right after it's been.
What does Iowa law state about that? So this is I just need to know, are we still on, the junk vehicles one, or we moved on?
No, I think we haven't even, you haven't got your junk vehicles yet. You said, cause I'm still back on junk in
I'm
the,
kind of, I guess, clumping them
yeah,
together.
junk in the yard, before you got to vehicles.
So each one is a different chapter in our ordinances, so in the updates to the ordinances, is the plan from city staff to address the repeat offender within the ordinance?
It's hard to address. I mean, I guess to kind of have a comparison, it's almost similar to someone who commits a crime and they're on probation, and then they get done with probation. How do you stop them from committing another crime?
My question was, what does Iowa code refer to with that?
We can increase the amount of fine for repeat offenders. You can charge a fine of $750 per day for first time offenders. You can charge $1,000 per day for second time offenders. I know in discussing with Dan, the court isn't gonna do a per day fine, but you can increase the fine if it's someone who has same violations in the past.
So is the intent to address that within the updated ordinance?
That's already part of our ordinance. Yeah.
Do those fines get paid?
Well, that's one of the reasons we serve the landlord. And the owner. Because if we obtain a judgment for $750, it becomes a lien against real estate owned by the defendant, whoever's part of that case. If you're just an occupant of the property, there's no lien, so no, those usually don't get paid, but if we're including the landlord, they have some motivation to make sure that it gets resolved.
Not it's full of fraction. Right,
We are adding landlords on these.
but I mean, the municipal infraction doesn't go against the taxes, does it?
No, it doesn't go against
Go
their
against,
taxes
right.
like a special assessment, but it is a judgment
That's
that becomes a lien
Right.
on their property. Yeah.
Some of them will never sell the property, but. it's
Yeah,
like-
Right, if, it wouldn't necessarily get paid right away, if they went to sell the property to refinance, it would show up as a lien, and they'd have to address it. at that
If
time.
somebody's not gonna, doesn't do anything with their property for 20 years, that lien just sits there for 20
Correct.
years.
Correct.
So just for a knowledge point for the community on this, so we have a lot of rentals in town, but the landlord is responsible for the upkeep of the property.
It's primarily, it's primarily the tenant, I mean, the occupant of the property, but we add the landlord for two reasons. One, we think it helps address the problem. And two, we're requesting authority, if we need to go on the property, remove the junk, and then assess our costs for removal to the property. So we have to include the landlord in that, so they have notice of what we're requesting or intending to do.
And in the legal aspect from a rental agreement, is there a requirement in there that stipulates who's responsible for that?
If you have a written agreement, yes, it's not uncommon for there to not necessarily be a written,
It's not required by the state.
Right.
Okay.
One thing I'd just like to clarify a little bit, Patrick, there's a whole lot of property owners in this town that have shit piles
Right.
on their property.
Yes, not all
It's not just renters.
Yep.
There's a lot of owners that, you know, and I helped pick up for the citywide cleanup for the last few years, the Lions Club. Rotary's gone out and picked up stuff, and, you know, some of these places you stop in and pick up one or two items. You could spend a day and a half there trying to clean that place up. It's stacked in the garages, it's stacked up next to the garage, it's piled all over. And so, and it's not just rentals. So I think that's something a lot of people like to, well, damn rental properties, they're the problem. It's not just rental properties.
I agree.
Further things, Brad?
are there any other questions?
Cover what? no,
Yeah, it's, we have two recommendations in, our handout or our outline. And one of them is just a broader definition of outdoor storage. I think it's clean, our ordinance is maybe arguably a little vague as to what constitutes junk or garbage. This definition is a little more clear, I think, both for code enforcement and for owners or tenants as to what constitutes a nuisance. So we'd recommend adding this as an additional definition of what constitutes a nuisance under chapter 50.
Okay, I know, I had a question, concerning the garbage bins being placed in the city right away and remaining there. And, I don't see that addressed in the nuisance. Is that somewhere else in the code?
Yeah,
Under the solid waste code?
Yep, and it's, you can't have them out 24 hours before pickup or 24 hours. They have to be, you can't place them out until 24 hours before they come pick them up, and you have to bring them back within 24 hours of when they're picked up.
So who addresses that? Is that code enforcement also, or who addresses that situation? Because we have a lot of that around the city. You have garbage bins, they remain there indefinitely. People just literally come out and put their garbage into their bins, and they just leave them on the curb, and they forever stay there. And you also have some, and I probably code, number 5 in the code, the nuisance code would address the, you have some receptacles that remain in the street, they are actually in the street. And not in the grass or, you know, up on the curb. It's literally sitting in the street, which is causing a traffic hazard at that point. So I'm just wondering who addresses that, because you know, I could probably go outside right now and drive up and down the city streets and cite at least 100 different residences where the garbage cans just remain there. They never take them back. And, you know, put them back on the side of their house or in their backyard or next to their garage, where they just continuously remain there. And that's, in my eyes, that's a nuisance, that's an eyesore. And that's something that we could as code enforcement address. well, under the solid waste code.
I guess that, to me, that gets back to, as you alluded to earlier, that's everybody in town is driving around town. Your officers, wastewater, water, whoever it is, streets, anybody that's driving around sees that sort of stuff. That needs to be turned in, so somebody can do it.
And it might be one of those things that what we could do is we could do a blanket thing one time, the first time, and everybody that has them out, go stick a door hanger on and we'll stick them on their bins or something to let them know, you know, what's going on, and put it on Facebook and try to do it that way first. Rather than signaling, singling each one out. What we find is, if we did that and didn't blanket cover the town at that time, what would happen is the same thing happens when we do nuisances such as sidewalk shoveling. And so we go up to the door, we do sidewalk shoveling, and Richard and Michael are both up there, they're both busting their butts and going out, they're painting the sidewalk, they're hanging a door hanger, they're posting and everything else. And then the guy who gets it, he calls in 47 of them the next day. How come you didn't do these 47 on this side of town? Well, because people work for 8 hours and they have other duties they have to do too. So, I mean, that might be, I think it's probably a good way. Maybe we'll try, if you're okay with that, we'll address that maybe on Facebook and then start maybe sticking some type of sticker on the bin itself as we go by. And then try to address it that, hey, your garbage, has been out there for more than 24 hours allowed. Maybe quote that section of code.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
a
mean,
good
'cause that's-
idea.
And because that's the problem, that's the reception that a lot of the citizens have there. A lot of complaints I get is that, we don't ever do anything about it, it just sits and sits and sits and nobody ever does anything about it. So maybe at least if it's addressed on Facebook and then maybe things start happening, maybe, But I think it needs to be addressed because it seems like it's not, and a lot of people complain about it and they just think that we just turn a blind eye to it with a lot of the other issues that we have with nuisances also. Nothing's being done, and that's what.
One thing that, like I said earlier, I looked at least 200 different towns. And a lot of them, Google was my friend for a whole weekend, but two that really caught my eye is Osage and Davenport. Well, Davenport isn't really the same size as us, but what I found interesting in reviewing the Osage nuisance abatement ordinance and the Davenport one, they both get to the same point. It's worded a little different. I want to read it to you because I think we need to have something. I would like to see something in the ordinance that reflects, I'll read the Osage one first. It's an obstruction to the free use of property which interferes with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property. Davenport one says, a nuisance when it poses an unreasonable threat to health or safety, you take that for what it's worth, or causes an unreasonable interference with surrounding neighbors. This is back to Delaney's point. Surrounding neighbors' ability to enjoy their own property. Those are in actual ordinances. And to Philip's point, to Delaney's point, a lot of the calls that I get is can't enjoy my property. Why? So one up on Allison Street, I think he has an illegal business where he's painting cars and doing automobile work with probably without a license, but in that yard, in the yard itself, is a camper, 4 trucks and 2 cars. And a call I get from the young lady to the east and the 2 across the street, I can't enjoy my property anymore. To me, that is not right.
Sure.
Patrick, I'm just gonna tell
Do
you,
have that, I mean, we have that definition in our.
I don't see that.
Yeah,
50.01 in
Okay.
our ordinance, almost verbatim. to what
Almost
you just
verbatim.
read.
Okay.
and I guess my response is, I think it's great that citizens voice their concerns to council, but for nuisance abatement, they really need to contact code enforcement and get that complaint into Richard so we can start our process.
When people call you, do you suggest that they call?
Yes.
Okay.
But, and a lot of times, they don't, they're scared. Why are they scared? Is code enforcement gonna tell the person who's doing the infraction that I called them? I said, no. But that's the reality. Half of them are elderly. So I can understand why they're concerned about that, you know?
But I mean, that's what we need to do. I mean, that should be our
Correct.
response, is that's where we direct them to, is to the people that, you know, now if nothing happens, then it's up to us to get these guys in front of us and find out why nothing's happened.
So where Michael has departed, where are we at with his replacement?
Should have one on very soon. Can you speak to the process of reporting a nuisance? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So they can call in, they can do it on the internet, they can do it, they can do it through the website if they want to. We do get some that way. We don't get as much as we used to. That usually comes to both myself, sometimes it comes to the mayor, sometimes it comes to the city administrator, whoever they want to tag on the internet. They send it in. If it doesn't come to me, more than likely it's gonna be funneled to me by either the city administrator, city clerk, or the mayor that there's an issue. And from that point, they don't need to name themselves. They can be completely anonymous. So there's nothing, we don't ask, you know, what's your name and why are you calling in or anything else. We just ask what the issue is with the property.
And what type of information do they need to,
We need the address and just basic information because Richard or whoever else is gonna go out at that point. Take it in for themselves. Sometimes we need their cooperation because we need to go onto their property. So, where Richard doesn't have the right to, let's say you have a nuisance in your yard, he doesn't have the right to walk inside your house. And they say, hey, there's a whole bunch of junk in the backyard. You don't have an alley behind your house, so he does not have the right to walk down your yard and get into your backyard. So sometimes we request their, you know, assistance, say, hey, do you mind if I, you know, you can see it from your kitchen window, but I can't see it from the street. You mind if I, you know, walk down on your yard? Most of them are actually agreeable to it. So, but there's not, I mean, after it's reported, they don't have to come to court and testify. I mean, there's a lot of different, codes as law enforcement that we use that we need the complainant to come and testify in front of that person, in front of the accused. And here they don't need to for the civil part of it, so.
so like in Patrick's case, and in my case as well, if somebody gives me a call and mentions the nuisance, I can report it. They don't have to, we don't necessarily have to refer them to code. We can take that information and portray it and pass it on ourselves.
You could, part of the reason we want them to call is we want them to have that firsthand knowledge, and when we're like, hey, if it's in the backyard. Cause if they tell him it's all in the backyard, you can't see it from the streets, when you drive by, you're not gonna see it.
Yeah.
That's gonna click something on us that says, hey, you know, cause a lot of times front yard looks great and it's like a mullet. You go in the backyard and it's part of the backyard, so. You get back there and that's where the mess is, and a lot of times we can't access that. If there's an alley going down, perfect, but we can't walk through anybody else's yard to get to that unless they give us permission. So, it's always good to talk to that person. I've never gotten a complaint on any of the code enforcement that they were rude and that they actually, you know, told somebody, hey, don't worry about it or anything else. Richard, right now, how many building permits have you issued?
As of today, I've issued 503 building permits this year.
So you guys think at 500?
270 all of
Right.
last year.
So you usually go between 250, maybe 280, sometimes more, sometimes less. He's at 500 right now. So Richard has completely full plate at this point, just doing that, but he is still out there. He's been working. I've been working. I always work 10-hour days, sometimes I work 11-hour days. Richard's been working 9.5-hour days, and while we're short. That's gonna be remedied very soon. We'll have a new code officer here. We'll introduce him to you guys. I think it's exciting getting somebody else on and helping out with this. Richard needs the help. We went out when Michael was here. I think that myself and Sienna Sonberg, my administrative assistant, I think we served 30 some ourselves. Well, these two went out with a section of town and 3 sections before spring cleanup. And went out, and we did a pretty good job of getting a lot of stuff cleaned up. So, but there's always follow-up, and there's always more that create themselves, so.
And I think that's gonna go further than any code change, is getting a code enforcement officer in. Hopefully get some continuity there where they get their feet under them, because there is a learning curve involved, certainly. So hopefully have a code enforcement officer that is there for a while, and I think that's gonna go further than any, ordinance changes will, as far as getting some of these issues addressed.
Actually,
I think it would be good to communicate. I think communication is one key. So, the citizen can say, well, I didn't know I couldn't do that. Well, we flood Facebook from the city side, staff side, every time it's the white stuff's gonna fall, reminder to, you have 24 hours to show your sidewalk, move your cars, and we do a good job of that. Both the police department and the city staff, so.
you wouldn't think we do a good job of how many cars we tag and how many walks, but
But I think in the same token, communication for the nuisance property could help us as well. We're always gonna get the negative aspect of this. So if we put, reminder that, it's illegal to keep your garbage cans out on the city right away or on the street, longer than whatever. Or you have a junk vehicle and you got X number of days to, you'll get people who are gonna be happy for it, and then, but the people who are complaining about it, which are probably the violators themselves. And their conspiracy theorists, they're gonna flood. And that's okay. I mean, get used to it because that's the way it is, but. As long as we're communicating, being communicated. Whatever channels, and maybe once we update these ordinances, that we send out a mass mailing to the residents of Charles City saying these are the changes to make sure that you are aware, because. Not every individual has Facebook, not every individual reads the press, listens to KCHA, whatever. But if it's mailed to them, then I guess to Brad, because from a legal perspective, was the person were they notified? If you do a mass mailing, does that aid us?
No, it wouldn't do anything, it's just other than provide, general information.
My last comment is, so every year we get a brief on where we are with, I think last time we got a brief with 66 or 67 houses and we have a packet here. What I would like to see added to this is in the last calendar year since the last brief is how many nuisance issues have we issued ticket on? How many have been running? How many are repeat offenders? And how many are going through the legal process? To me, I need something to say, or to me, that's how I'm gonna know if we're making a progress or not. My last question, I guess, to you two, are we making progress?
we are. Look at your packet that I just handed out, making big progress on the abatement, which I think Brad's gonna get to here shortly. It's a little different than the nuisances themselves, junk nuisances and everything else. Part of the issue here is with Michael, kind of not disparaging Michael at all. Michael was not a very big, technical computer guy. And so we're having a hard time even trying to find like how many he did, his pictures. I was gonna do it before and after on all his pictures. All of his pictures, he's got about some pictures, they're all mixed together, and I think he knows how to pull them out, but I don't. So, yeah, we've made big progress in a lot of different areas. There's a lot of nuisances that have been cleaned up. We have a lot of them that have gone to court, or not a lot, but we've had some that had to go that far, but most were cleaned out word of mouth. And I can take you around town, we could take you, we'd love to take them to, we'll take you on tour, we'll show you, which ones. We can show you before and after some of them, but there's just a lot of them that citizens, you're gonna hear the squeaky wheel, that's what you're gonna hear. But there was one on Salzer, if you go up Salzer Street, you'll know exactly which one it is, and that one I've gotten so many good comments on, and that's the one that he just went and spoke with them and they took care of it. We didn't have a court system or anything else. A lot of good comments on that one. There's just, I mean, I guess I could name a lot of them. We're not gonna name addresses though here in public forums.
I think I didn't convey my point to you very clearly. These are residences. Well, how in the nuisance abatement, where the resident is basically placing garbage in the city right of way. Or has a junk vehicle, where Richard has gone out and issued a citation to say, you need to clean this up. Okay,
So
That's-
just a real quick clarification, he never issued citation.
what does he do?
So the only citation, there's no citation, it's municipal infraction when it gets to the court system.
Okay,
So we don't have that option of giving them a citation. That would make our life easier. But we can't issue citations. So he's going out and speaking to them at this time and giving them in order to abate the thing.
that's the metric that I would like to see. To me, if we look at those numbers every year, are they going up? Are they going down? How many repeat offenders do we have? That's to me, I would know as a council person if we are making a difference or not. And we look at budget seasons right around the corner. Another resource to aid in that. That's the metrics I would like to see. This is great, and there are some good news stories in here. But there's more to the nuisance than just the property, the house itself.
Is a higher number better or worse for orders to abate? You know?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, having the number of, doors they've knocked on to say, you need to clean this up. What is a success? Because a high number means they're getting out there a lot, but a low number might mean that they're still out there a lot, but there's fewer, like. What is it you wanna, I guess, see as a success, that they're out there knocking on a lot of doors, or that there are fewer doors to have to knock on with,
How many
whatever?
doors did Richard have to knock on?
I guarantee you, he responds to 100% of the formal complaints he gets for nuisances. To me, that's the most important number, is if you get he gets a formal
Yeah.
complaint, he's responding to it, and we're not leaving them alone until it's addressed.
Maybe that's it. Okay, how many formal complaints did Richard receive? How many formal complaints did?
Yep.
Were
resolved.
abated?
And I think we can certainly track that. If we get a formal complaint, here's the steps that were taken at that address, here's when it was resolved.
Those are easy metrics, I mean, we can do those pretty easily.
I've actually created.
It gives me something that you can, as a council, can say, okay. This year, for calendar year 25, we did 547. Out of those 547, how many were abated and no revisiting 30 days later? It's just back to the same, right? That's the kind of numbers I would like to see, so we can make a determination if the ordinance, and that's what, when I originally mentioned that I would like to start having this conversation was, the first thing we had to look at is the ordinance. Is the ordinance sufficient enough? So what I get out of here tonight is that our ordinances are pretty much the same as about, and it is true.
Yep.
But there is some room for improvement in those ordinances, and we will see those improvements in future council. But back to how do we know where the ordinances and the execution, what Richard's doing and the new hire when he gets on board and all of the departments and the citizens, are we making a difference? I'd like to see that every year. And if the number goes down, hey, we might be making a difference, the number keeps going up. Or, go back to the communication piece. Facebook post. You didn't know it's illegal to put your TV and computer on the city right of way as garbage, because it's not gonna get picked up. I can tell you, I drove around the entire town, there's probably 20 of them that are like that. And now they're crushed and whatever, and it's just sitting there.
So it's pretty easy to get those numbers, I think, from probably the years previous, because all the city notes that, I think those numbers are included in the city notes. I'd have to look back, but I can, you know, that's one place I do put it, I will be happy to present it to council though. So we can bring our own enforcement department in, so.
I think it'd be fair for all the councils.
My question,
All be reading their city.
yeah, my question is, there's two code enforcement officers, is that sufficient to address this issue?
We talked about that, so, you know, if there was another code enforcement officer, could we address more, we could be more proactive, he could be out there, he could be out, you know. We actually had this discussion just really recently, if you had a third code enforcement officer, that's all he did was nuisances, you would have no problem finding hundreds out there. To do that, then we have to hire another Brad probably. So Brad's not gonna be able to take care of it all. So it's sort of how do you eat the whale, you know, one bite at a time. We can try to eat the whale all at once. And we're working at them and we're doing, I think, a very good job. Now, would another code enforcement officer help? Yeah, it would make life easier. He wouldn't have to work so many hours, it wouldn't be so grueling and everything else. And I think just when he gets a partner in here, it's gonna make a big difference and you're gonna see, you know, things start to change probably in the spring. It's gonna be hard to get a lot accomplished here yet in the fall, unless we get that nice weather they're talking about. But yeah, I don't think it's unnecessary thing. I think that it would probably clog our court system, clog Brad and everything else, so. I think that two is sufficient right now, and Richard may be arguing with me right now, because he's done 500 building permits so far this year, along with everything else he does, so.
And I'm thinking more along the lines of the smaller nuisances, you know, we have. Our issue is probably we got a whole lot of small things, issues, and like you said, if we could have maybe two more staff out there addressing them a little bit more proactively, maybe we can get those issues solved, and then, you know, just save the court system for the larger issues. I think a lot of our nuisance is just such a buildup of, you know, so many little things. We have so many little things that nothing ever gets done. It seems like nothing ever gets done with. And we only focus on the bigger, like the homes that are nuisances and things like that. And we see that action happening, and, you know, those usually end up in the courts. But like I said, on the other hand, we have trash receptacles that, like I said, have been sitting on the curb for months on end and things like that, which maybe, you know, another staff member of that's what they could go out and do, just, you know, and go up and knock on that door and let those people know, you know, you need to, we have a code that says that you need to remove your trash can within 24 hours of pickup, and vice versa. You tell them to put it out within 24 hours of anticipated pickup, you know, those type of things. You know, maybe an extra officer might be able to address those, and then all of those nuisances, as they all get solved, all those little things start to get solved. The TVs on the curb, you know, things like that. As they start to get solved, then the nuisance problem it'll seem a lot less than it does now, because all of those little things aren't being addressed as well, because we have some of the bigger things that we're trying to get taken care of.
So Hugh, I just want to make sure that I'm really clear on what you actually said earlier about needing another Brad. Having everything that ends up in the courts started as something small, and when the person didn't address it at a conversation, then it escalates from there. So even another code enforcement officer who is just doing these small things, eventually, if the people they are talking to are not complying, it still has to get kicked up the chain for something to happen with it. So it would still end up necessitating another Brad. Is that what you were saying
Correct.
earlier? I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that.
So,
Thank
and
you.
just, I'm gonna preface this because I'm gonna be back in front of you again, probably before I do the codification with the whole code change thing. One of the things I'm gonna ask for is to take the rental inspections. Right now, we do them once every 3 years and request that they're once every 5 years. And the reason being is because he's doing 500 so far building permits. And our oncoming then code enforcement officer is going to be doing 900 some rentals, he's gonna be doing 300 and some of those a year. Take 200 working days approximately, and 300 and some rental inspections, and it gets very, it's an arduous process. So for us to get those done, I'll approach you guys after, if we can take that out to 5 years, we'll divide the town instead of into 3 sections, divide it into 5 sections. Do I think that we're gonna end up with some issues? I really don't believe that, because what we have is Richard's taking them here after Michael's been gone, complaints about rentals. So if you're in a rental that hasn't been inspected, you know, maybe you got inspected 2 years ago, you're coming out next year, but you're having problems as a tenant, they do call. So he's taken numerous ones of those. So I don't think it's gonna be an issue, but that's going to help also, the new code enforcement officer, so that he's not just constantly focusing on doing the rental inspections and trying to scramble and get those done. He's also gonna be helpful, gonna be able to do some more of the nuisances also. It frees up his plate a little bit, so. Because when I keep saying there's not a code enforcement officer coming on, you guys think, well, geez, he's just gonna do nuisances. No, they have a lot of other, so.
Backing back to the proposed language in the ordinance for chapter 5002, I think I understand what you mean by plastic tarps, but a lot of people use plastic tarps in a very useful way, that's not a nuisance, so I just wanna call out, maybe you wanna think about that, how we can find that a little bit better.
I certainly don't mean to lessen the issue that we have here in Charles City. But having gone to the Iowa League of Cities conference for a number of years, this is not just an issue that Charles City is facing. This thing is a hot topic at just about every meeting those people have, and they've tried to put on numerous seminars about this. And I think probably that's where Brad has gotten some of his information. Also, in my humble opinion, there's been a big societal shift over the last 10, 20 years. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't care much about their own properties, let alone anybody else's properties. And I think we're just seeing all of that manifest itself in spades right now. And I don't know how you change that process. I mean, you can put all the rules and stuff into place that you want. But until you have people that truly care about it and want to do something about it, it's really hard to legislate compliance, you know, with things. So it's not just Charles City. I mean, this is happening in a lot of other communities all over the place, and it's a real issue.
If I could indulge in 1 minute, so today I had a conversation with one of the Park and Rec guys. He actually stopped me. I was going into the police department. He drove up, stopped and talked to me, and he told me about a nuisance. And he said, he goes, hey, I was up by your house. And he goes, there's a house and it's on my block. And he goes, man, that thing used to be perfect. They used to keep that up just immaculate. And he said, now they don't. And he goes, and it's not, it doesn't get mowed well, it doesn't get trimmed well, they fall into your trees, house is starting to fall apart, everything else. And he goes, and he knows that I bought several houses. He goes, you always buy the worst house. And he goes, why do you do that? I said, first off, I'm cheap. Second off, if you buy the worst house in the neighborhood and you fix up that bad house, just sometimes you're hoping that the other people are gonna see that and say, hey, maybe I need to take a little more pride in my house. So we got talking and he said, I live somewhere that you guys served a nuisance. You have to go out this way, I'm sorry.
You have to go out there, you can't go out that way.
And he goes, but now you're up, so you might get a little embarrassed.
Not to call you out or
We'll let
anything.
you out. We don't want you to set off the alarm because.
Yeah, the alarms will go off if you go that way.
She was trying to sneak out.
I know.
Quietly and respectfully.
Have a good day.
Sorry, sorry.
So, but he was talking then that he saw a place that actually got served, Michael actually served them. And he actually saw 2 other houses in the neighborhood start to clean them up. So it does get very depressing. The lane, for us is as citizens of the community and also as, you know, people who are going and enforcing it. But just once in a while, you see a glimmer of hope. You serve somebody and then the neighbors are like, man, they took care of that. Now my house sort of looks like a crappy house. And so we're hoping that's what happens. I mean, maybe peer pressure is still there, but you are gonna have a lot of people that just don't care. I mean, I see it in law enforcement all the time. I mean, we see it around the nation that people just don't care like they used to. So, but we don't want to give up hope. No, so.
Brad, anything else?
The only thing I wanna comment on before we can, so we were talking about junk vehicles, and I think that was a main concern and main issue we want to discuss tonight. There is a procedure in our code, which we occasionally utilize, that allows code enforcement to serve an order to abate. It gives the owner 10 days to contest by filing a response with the city council and requesting a hearing. And if they don't, code enforcement can abate the nuisance and assess the cost of the property. We rarely utilize that because there's a lot of risk involved by sending a government official onto someone's onto someone's property without court authority or without an order from a judge. And then removing their personal property, again, without court authority from a judge. So we use that for situations where it's like yard waste, or if it's just garbage bags as opposed to junk vehicles or outdoor furniture or, arguably personal property. But that procedure is an option, and it is something we use for more minor violations, I would say.
I like that, because if you drive around, as I mentioned before, drive around town, there is a lot on the city right of way. So if it's on the city right of way, a lot of TVs, computers, and just regular garbage, then we're not on the residents' yard per se, we're in the city right of way where a lot of this is. Then we are allowed to do that and then assess the cost back to.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that they're adequately served and that the notice you provide is sufficient. So again, if you don't follow the exact procedure that you need to, it leaves the city open for a potential claim. Whereas if you go to the court,
He's talking about.
yeah.
It's a little tougher to do. So most of the court cases on that I've seen, the city does not win. Do we get rid of the nuisance? Yeah, we get paid the nuisance at our cost. So once it's on city right away.
But at the same time, you don't wanna just start off and start doing that,
No.
because you'll end up with a whole lot more
Then
crap.
start down
Yeah,
there.
the city will pick it up.
So you gotta make sure you go after the property
Oh, I agree.
first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions or junk or?
I'm gonna go into these real quick.
Yeah, so I guess. I had a couple other code sections there. Basically, they're the code sections we use to try to address essentially abandoned and dilapidated properties as opposed to junk and junk nuisance. What Hugh's gonna go through most of the time, there's a state code section, which we've come to council on a few times, that allows the city to file a petition with the district court and ask the court to find that the structure constitutes an abandoned building. And there's all these factors that the code lays out, the courts are supposed to consider when making that determination. But the benefit of this section is ultimately, if the city is successful, we get awarded the property. And then we can tear the structure down and we have title to the lot. Without getting awarded the property, all we can do is tell the owner, you need to tear the structure down. And if they don't comply, you go and fine them. So, and again, we've talked about, finding someone is not always a deterrent. So we use this section to try to address abandoned and dilapidated houses, and we've done it with some success. I know there's a lot more on the list we eventually want to get to, but again, it's kind of trying to address the most pressing ones that receive the most complaints or that the most visible.
And when I mentioned earlier that all these things take time, that process for the 657A process is even more time consuming.
Yeah, I mean,
right? So,
you have to build your case to try to, if you don't have these factors established, you need to start building your case that these factors are established. And then you file a petition, and if they file a response, they get set for trial in district court, which can be, it was over 2 years, like the chief said, during COVID. Now it's easily a year before you get, it could easily be a year before you get a trial, and then, the court has to make a decision on after the trial. So it's a long process.
it is not easy or inexpensive to have. Like, we can't say, well, we've got 15 properties, let's have cases going on all of them. That's unreasonable to assume.
Yeah.
More than 3 or 4 tends to be unreasonable, correct?
Right. Sure. The only option would be potentially we threw out the idea of like hiring a firm from Cedar Rapids or something that specializes in representing cities and say, here's 8 of them. What's your quote for doing 8? It would probably be more than our budget in a single year for nuisance abatement.
So this is sort of a segue into the next discussion line item here, and I'm not gonna go through this whole packet with you, but you guys flip through the packet real quick, you get to 18th Avenue, or, sorry, I didn't number it for you. You get one to 18th Avenue there. Anyway, you look at that, we ended up abating a house there, and now there's a new house going up. Exactly what we want as a city, we wanna, I mean, cause everything in front of that you're seeing, almost everything in front of that are empty lots. When you see the house that we took care of, either by 657A or through speaking with the owners, it ends up an empty lot. Well, we don't want a town full of empty lots either. Robin Street one there, Steve Deere did a great job in working that out. It was abated there, so. This is the $40,000 you guys put aside each year. We've talked about increasing that and everything else. And you get down to 11th Street, that's in progress. That's gonna be money that was used there to take care of that. We need money to actually get that house to capital well or septic. Well, wasn't there? No, septic. I think we took out 11th Street.
Yeah, we had to remove a septic.
So we had to use some of that money there. 4th Avenue there through 657, the city's, the owner of this house, that's in progress right now. I have another meeting with, NIAC to hope that they will bring their students to work on that. Then 10th Avenue, there's very difficult to see by those pictures. But they're actually fixing that house up. They're getting new windows and re-siding that through our conversations with them. And then the last one there looks like may have looked worse than it was to begin with, but, that's in progress. We're looking at that through maybe the fire department to do a controlled burn. They have to take some of that, siding thing asbestos off of there, so. But just, these are different than nuisance properties. These are like nuisance buildings or abandoned buildings where somebody's not living in and they become either a dangerous building at that point or a nuisance building, so. To sort of segue into there, totally different topic than what we were just speaking of, but I want you guys to know where the $40,000 is to set aside each year, what that goes to. So if we have to tear one of those down, it's not just the cost of tearing it down, we also have to cap the sewer, the water, we have to bring in the dirt, we have to fill it back in. So.
What the rough estimate to demolish a house and have the utilities 15 to 20,000?
It's about 15, sometimes tear down the house and another, maybe it matters if they're on both, if they're on separate streets, you're talking between 10 and 15 again.
Yeah.
So sometimes that $40,000 is gone on one house, sometimes we get 2 or 3 houses. Between the 3 of us right now, we've worked out sort of a schedule, we're looking at some houses. I'd be more than entertaining if you guys could tell me, hey, there's a house here that's looking very poor. There's a lot of different things that go through 657. You can't just say, hey, this house looks like crap, I wanna tear it down. There's a lot of different things, whether there's animals living in, where there's windows broken out. Whether there's, how long hasn't been living there, whether the taxes have been paid, there's a lot that goes into this. But we have some houses picked out where we try to pick out ones that are, high visibility. And so, but if you guys think of some, I don't want it in a public forum, feel free to contact me, at any time. But we're moving forward and, Phoebe actually hit the nail on the head. We try to keep 3 going at once because they do take so long. So we can't take care of 3 a year, but we can take care of 2 in some points. I mean, there's been years we've taken care of 2 many years in a row. So as you can see from some of these. So it's positive and it's negative. It's something that I struggle with, taking somebody's property from them. We're the government, we're taking your property from them. So none of us take it lightly at all. It's not something we want to do. We also don't, Tyler would hope that we don't get a whole bunch more because Tyler has to mow them until we sell the lots. So the ones that we can infill with houses, that's the goal. It really is. If we can even infill them with, the garage, we changed our ordinance on that. That's a win too on some of these smaller lots, so. But
We've been, from our last, last 3 budget seasons, we've been very adamant about. We had a certain amount and we had discussion to raise it. I there'll be another discussion point, or next, the upcoming budget season. You are right, there is an associated cost to that. Are we also looking at control burns?
So we can only do so many of those a year. It can get very expensive for us also. There's things we have to do. The last one on there, we spoke with the people and they're open for it, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through. We can only do one of those a year almost within city limits. It matters. If we can get them on opposite sides of the city, we can do two. There's a controlled burn and a practice burn. I don't want to get into the state code, but there's totally different things between a controlled burn and a practice burn. We want to do a practice burn. We want it to be beneficial for us and for our fire department and for Kyle Floyd to command. So that's what we strive for if we can. And we've done that on. I want to say two of those in your packet. They see empty lots on now, those were practice burns for multiple agency fire departments.
I mean, even if you burn it down, you still have to get rid of the foundation, the
We do.
water, sewer. I mean,
We do.
those costs don't go away.
We do.
It's not a free
Right.
removal.
We do. And some of these, not all of these, I want to stress that, these all weren't 657. A lot of these staff just worked with the owner. And the owners agreed that, hey, it needs to be taken down. There's been times when we talked about doing cost sharing, if it's getting to where we do a 657, when they approach you at some point and say, hey, maybe we do a cost sharing with this person and we don't want to get into the business, or I don't think we should be in the business of paying to get rid of somebody's junk house. But if we can do it for a quarter of the price, for Brad to fight it in court, and it's gonna take us 2 years or a year and a half to do, sometimes that might be the solution. You know, I don't think we should do it everywhere, but there's houses I think that need to be taken care of. And when Steve was here, it was a strong consideration that, so, maybe we'll see what, the next city administrator says. So from there, but it's something at least we consider pretty strongly, just because it makes things go a lot faster.
All right. Appreciate you guys' time. I know you weren't looking forward to this meeting, but I think I think the consensus is that we want to do things that help you do your job.
No,
We're not here to reprimand, we're here to, what can we do to make your jobs easier?
No, and I appreciate the info. Anytime we can strengthen our code or whatever, it's something we're always looking forward to. Obviously, we're in the confines of the state code on doing that, but Richard's been a very big asset coming from Mississippi. This is pretty much what we did all the time. Since it's down in the city he was in. So he's been a really big asset. I think moving forward, having the two of them, it's really gonna help. So thanks for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys for what you do, because that's not a fun job. I guarantee it.
What's your
We
wife?
have quite a few people here that have invested a lot of their evening. We have time for them to give some great comments.
I guess we could. Anybody wants to spend 3 minutes talking, you're welcome.
I have some comments, Mayor.
Okay?
I believe this was the discussion still about the junk cars and stuff. This is the end of that same discussion, correct?
Pardon me?
About the nuisance.
About the nuisances, which
Yes.
is more than junk cars, yes.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you hadn't moved on to number 6, because he was talking about buildings, so I just wanted to make sure. The 7 days, did you guys land on that for 7 days? Because a car not moving for 7 days, my girlfriend works from home. And on a weekend, if she rides with me, her car could easily sit that long. Or if somebody goes on vacation, their car is gonna sit that long. So 7 days just seems a little ridiculously short.
There has been no official proposal or decision on that at all. It was just something that was simply suggested, so we haven't seriously entertained tonight at our planning session, I would say, any exact language for that.
Okay. The second thing I was wanted to comment on was cats, stray cats, people feeding stray cats, people giving housing to stray cats just for short times and stuff. Some of that's already in the code, but some people in the room don't know that. So can that be something that can be dealt with a little bit more? And can the current rules where if you give shelter to a stray cat, you're taking ownership for that cat, and then you're responsible for a cat, animal at large ticket. That's under current city code. So, can we start dealing with the stray cats as nuisances?
Yeah, that'd probably be a discussion for another time, not under the nuisance here, but I'll take it into consideration if you wanna call me in my office.
Okay. And then the last thing was, Delane and Patrick both talked about, getting calls from citizens saying that something's happening where they can't enjoy their property. And I'd like them to explain that a little bit more on why one person's call on that matters over somebody else's. Because it's kind of similar to, a related subject on enjoying property.
You want to speak to that?
Are you looking for clarification from me?
Yes. You and Delane
What?
both mentioned it. You get
Okay.
calls from citizens saying that somebody's doing something and they can't enjoy their property because of
Correct.
that, what somebody's doing. And you felt that that was a good argument in support of this. So I'm guessing why your views on that have changed,
Why my views haven't changed?
or why they have.
My views haven't changed.
Okay, because it seems different from the discussion on the street closure for the car show.
No, we're talking about a nuisance causing, he's speaking to a nuisance causing
This is about. a nuisance.
another resident not enjoying their, property. That's what we're speaking on. I'm just speaking, I'm sorry to speak for you, but
Fine.
that's what Patrick and Delane are talking about. Another property's nuisances impeding upon the enjoyment of your property. If I want to sit out on my porch and I have to look across the street at a nuisance every single day, that's impinging on my enjoyment of the property. A temporary closure of the street, for a public event is not considered a nuisance.
And
We're
it's
just
not-
talking about nuisances in particular, causing a problem with the enjoyment of one's own property. That's
And
what
then-
I believe we're speaking and we're talking about.
And a nuisance would be something that is ongoing and not a temporary event. So something that has been ongoing and persistent that affects your ability to enjoy your property, not to use it. You still have access clearly to your own property as a result of a nuisance, but it is an ongoing rather than a temporary event.
Anyone else have any comments, public comments?
I just think Pat did a good job tonight, so.
You have to come up here
Oh.
and introduce yourself and.
Right now, I just feel like Pat did a good job tonight. I feel like this nuisance has been going on for 20+ years. I know I wrote an editorial when my son was 7 years old. He noticed how filthy and junky Ninth Avenue was. So I wrote an editorial, and then Ralph Smith, when he was city attorney, had a meeting here, discussed it all, and it's like 19 years later, we're still in this predicament. And I just want to congratulate Pat. I feel like you're speaking for us. I speak for a lot of people. It's a big problem in town. Citizens issues, and I hopefully we can see progress. I don't see progress, like Hugh says there's progress. I don't see it. A lot of people don't. That's just how I feel. It's very sensitive for me. I feel Charles City was a great place. It was groomed. It looked really great back in the day. Now it's not. I feel like we can do better. Hopefully something happens. Like I said, Pat, did good tonight. I feel like you stuck up for us citizens.
I mean, I love living here.
I do too. I've been here all my life.
And I drive around town and I see what you see. I'm as frustrated as you know.
Yeah, I'm very frustrated. And people make fun of me because I'm frustrated. But
I feel your frustration. I'm just as frustrated.
your parents moved up by me because they had some issues, it's not all neighbors, and I think we have a great neighborhood, I wanna keep our neighborhood great. And I hope everybody else wants to keep their neighborhood, and so, but anyway, that's just me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I am Brenda Murphy, and I live up on Clinton Street. Nobody, I'm sure, knows that area. I had a conversation with this young man the other day, and I'm so happy that you guys are getting him help. Because I think he's very overworked. Just from, the comments that I made, he said, I'll put it on my list. And it needs to be on the list. I walk 10 to 15,000 steps a day. And in our neighborhood, and I see all the junk. And my husband is very meticulous about his yard and the driveway, whatever. And so when you see the junk, 2 pickups with 2 dogs tied to them or chained to the dog or to the pickups, and they've been there for 3 years probably. The dogs just now, but the nuisance as far as them barking every night, we go to bed early. They don't take them in until 10 o'clock and they're out there all day long chained up. And I know I'm not complaining, but it's ridiculous. I think that's cruelty. I think, the vehicles that are parked in the backyard and now he's got another one sitting out front. That I visited with him about the other day. That it needs to be addressed, and I'm glad you guys are addressing it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brenda.
Anyone else?
I'm Donna Willis, I'm the CEO of Flood Time Medical Center, so my perspective today is more from a recruit. I agree with everything that was said, I'm not repeat, but I could say the same thing personally as well. However, as we recruit very difficult positions, I have driven people around me, my own as well, other people who are trying to sell. And it is it's a great community. I chose here 4 years ago for a lot of reasons. The natural beauty, there's so much going on in this community, I'm very proud of. However, when we're trying to, particularly hiring properties, trying to encourage people to purchase them, but across the street or maybe the street getting to that property as a nuisance property, it's a hard sell. So much that we have lots of things to neighboring communities. I don't want that. I want the people that work at the hospital to at least live in the county, right? Not move to a different county or different community. So it's also a tax base, right? We need people that come here to live here, to work here, live here, and help our tax base. So it's a financial thing as well for the community. And I think we can all agree, right? We need that. We need people to live here, and live, work, play, all the things, right? Spend money at our shops or stores or restaurants. So it's something that we need to address. I appreciate all the efforts that people are making. And if we need more help, I think it's a small investment. I'm not minimizing what people make, but I'm just saying for the return of having people actually come here and live here, buy properties here, pay taxes here, help us thrive. So it's a bigger equation than just, we don't like looking at it, which I agree with all that. That's true. But we want people to move here. We want our community to grow. I know we're working hard on our end at the hospital to grow and to provide services, but I have to be able to recruit physicians, nurses, technicians, even other people, office administrators, all the things, all the positions that it takes to run a hospital, which serves community. And this is a factor that I've been frustrated with for a number of years now, so. I do, again, thank you for all you do. I appreciate it, and I know it's not easy what you do, and I support it, so let me know what I can do to help. It's nice to know you can go online, though. I didn't know that you could anonymously.
I'm gonna know it's you, Donna.
I'm Dean Stewart, don't live in Charles City, but I spend a lot of time here, on Kelly Street. So we all see the town, right? And so a lot of the things that are being discussed are a little bit systemic. Demographic, economic, mental health, wellness, neighborliness, love and compassion for other people. So, sold the house a few weeks ago, and I'll be real brief. One phone call. Yeah, I was 99 years old. One phone call, one conversation. 4 cars? 3, I don't know. Gone, boom. It was done personally, respectfully. Has a 10-page code that y'all chatted through really hard. Got stuck in all the details. The code's there. I think where change happens is people connection, whether that's a communications officer with the city. Where do you put it? Where do you get out? Where do you find the info? What do you do? Maybe, I don't know. But it's systemic. And so it's neighborhood to neighborhood. There's markets by block. There's markets by half block, which side of the street. That's gonna determine value. And so I'm a little conflicted here because I'm an advocate of property rights and free will. It's the cornerstone of our country, under all of the land. Do what you want, own it free. Or it becomes a public hazard that we gotta step in. So whether the housing or the commercial thing coming up, buildings and people are connected. They're really close. Or you hear enjoyment. To me, I think the word is lawful or peaceful enjoyment, says the code. That's my right. So if a neighbor doesn't do that, and affects my right for peaceful enjoyment. That's not cool. That's against the rules. It's not against, it's against the law. And so all sorts of layers, all sorts of bureaucracies, it's expanded. Our economy's got polar. A little more path, a little more left. A lot of these people need help. And sometimes knocking their crap to the curb is the help they need. Sometimes is, let me help you get the stuff from the curb to your yard. And so I think it takes a systemic communication, enforcement. But we're not heavy on manpower. I'd rather have you picking up the guy who's in my backyard sleeping on a bike, right? 4 or 5 times the last couple of weeks. Been working on a garbage can. I'll take the guy on the bike in my backyard. Get him up. That's systemic homelessness. He was on the picnic table. Okay, we see it. And so, got the rules, but we're gonna need to kind of get a broader base support for these guys. And the code and taking care of each other, I think. So what that is, whiskey, I don't know. But it's just not. Your stuff looks like crap and take care of it. You can teeth it all you want if they don't have the ability to do it. As a community and a town and schools and businesses, we come together to help. And so. Maybe a whiskey green conversation, but it's pretty broad based right now. And our economy's kind of tipping a little wider away from us, a little bit, small town market, so I'm total supporter. But let's keep the choice and people's rights to live as they choose without destroying peaceful enjoyment. Thanks, Dean. Anybody else? We did have one letter submitted that one said could not be here and wanted to have the letter read. And this is from Emily Garden. Her name is Emily Garden. I'm co-chair of the Charles City Housing Task Force. I want to speak briefly about something fundamental to our community's health. Good, clean, safe housing. Safe housing is more than 4 walls and a roof. It's the foundation of family stability, public health, and local pride. When homes are well maintained, neighbors feel secure, property values are protected, and children can grow up in environments that support learning and well-being. Conversely, nuisance properties, vacant, poorly maintained, or chronically problem-ridden homes
do real damage. They drain resources, depress surrounding property values, create safety and health risks, and erode trust in our neighborhoods. I want to acknowledge the hard work of our city staff and the code enforcement team have put in to address these problems with the constraints of law and budget. Your efforts matter and they've made a difference. At the same time, the landscape is changing. Turnover of properties, tenants, and code enforcement officers is higher everywhere, and our community is feeling the strain of that reality. Because of this, I believe we need to focus on a concise, easy to follow nuisance policy that plainly spells out what constitutes a violation, how violations are documented, and what penalties or remedies follow. I realize Chief Anderson is working on something to this nature. I fully believe a transparent policy will help residents understand expectations, help enforcement act consistently and fairly, and give property owners a clear path to compliance or consequences when necessary. Thank you for your consideration and for all you do to keep Charles City a place we're proud to call home. I wanted to read that since Emily sent it to Brittany and asked if it could be read tonight. With that, I think we're ready to move on to the next topic. I'd say this has been a lot of things shared and a lot of opinions, not opinions, facts talked about and opinions shared, I guess. But I think this was a step forward. I know we've talked about with John's retirement. Maybe we need to do something different in that, in our code enforcement, engineering, licensing, all that. Maybe we need to have a new department that addresses all these issues. So I think that's something that with the new city administrator, something to talk about too. To say, maybe do we need a community department that addresses a lot of these things? So I think that, a lot of things have been brought up here that we can follow through on, so.
This is the first step.
Yeah, yep.
It's a good step.
Yeah.
We gotta wait to go, but. To the one to your point, we can't wait 19 more years to have another meeting and rehash the same stuff. So I think we're looking at, in the near term, we're gonna be looking at updating ordinances. How, a new hire. So we took a good first step tonight, but there's more steps to go in the near and long term. That's how I see it.
Pat, can I just say something quickly? We have law enforcement volunteers, reserves. Is there any way we need to have a code enforcement volunteer? Officer, he's a code enforcement officer. I mean, it's kind of a bizarre question, but
There needs to be some sort of appointment under our code in order to give that person authority to issue formal abatement orders. Not that someone as a private citizen can say, hey, I noticed your yard's messy, could you clean that up? But as far as any like actual enforcement, has to be someone appointed by council or code.
Those are all things to look at as we move forward, so. All right, thank you for your time and your efforts.
Sir, can I ask you just one more question? Greg, I guess my question is, if we were to do something like that, could we look to you or, maybe get some, talk to you about some people who might step into those type of roles?
Step into one of those too. With the right training, what have you. I mean, I don't, maybe it's a bizarre question, but.
I guess that's something that maybe we can look at. Yeah.
Something to look into.
So yeah, that's something that we'll maybe look at.
Right.
At another workshop and see if it's something that's we could do. Why not to use the community to help? If it's a community problem, why not use the community to help if they're willing to help?
I think I don't think we want to take one thing at a time. I
Yeah.
think it's part of the long term.
I agree.
But it is a possibility.
Absolutely.
All right, next step, vacant building ordinance. Ordinance heavy tonight.
Yeah.
We had a request from the Business Improvement Committee of the Main Street program to, do some addressing of vacant buildings and we're just talking now about commercial and, industrial. We're not talking about residential. Maybe that might come down the road, but we want to just take a small step first. And so that committee has looked at some other cities, what they have done. They've sent those on to myself and then to Brad and Chief Anderson. And so, if you guys want to maybe make some comments on what you've heard, and I think Mark Wicks and Dean Stewart are both here from that committee. And so they can answer questions if we have some. Go ahead, Brad, if you have anything to say.
Well, we haven't really talked about it at a staff level yet. I reviewed Monday and, received the sample ordinance yesterday, so it's not something I've discussed with you or code enforcement. My comment was going to be that I wouldn't be in favor of this for residential properties, just because of, as Hugh said, the amount of administrative work that code enforcement already has, then to try to register and keep track of and inspect vacant rentals that aren't public nuisances is just, in my opinion, it's not a good use of code enforcement time and resources. If you were going to limit it to commercial and industrial, again, it's not something I've discussed on a staff level, but it is something that other communities have done. I don't know whether it's been effective. I think the intent is, hey, by making owners register, you kind of push them towards a plan, either rehabilitating it, or if they don't have a plan, hopefully push them towards selling it to someone who is going to rehabilitate it. So I think the intent is to maybe catch these properties before the quote unquote public nuisances that you can address through your nuisance ordinance and make owners come up with a plan for how they're gonna, what they're gonna do with the building to make it productive.
You did, I'm sorry, do you have anything to add?
So again, right, I just got them, I read them, I went through them as quickly as I could here, Richard and I did speak shortly about them. And I completely agree with Brad, coming up with this completely, apart from that, I would be more for the vacant building. And I look at Mason City's code, and I guess I'm wondering what we're trying to accomplish, and I think Dean sort of hit the nail on the head, is we have to have a place here, especially, the reason I'm not for the residential, we have to have a place where do we over, govern everybody, and why are we having them register their vacant homes if they're not on our list for being a nuisance already? So we have something that covers the vacant homes and the nuisance. I also think we have something that covers the vacant building, and if you look at Mason Cities, if you did look at it, most of that's covered under our property maintenance code. Is it nice to have another tool to use? I think it is, and I think that might be sort of what Brad's getting at with both the commercial and the industrial, is that now it's another tool. If we have a building that we've actually addressed several industrial and commercial buildings that have been nuisances that needed maintenance, and we've done that through a different part of the code. So this gives us, I guess, a little more awareness maybe that they're there. But I also struggle with, I know people that have buildings, they store stuff in. There's several buildings up by me, the old meat locker, you know where that is. Is that vacant? Well, they're storing stuff in it, so what do we consider vacant, do we tell, Circle K, hey, this is a vacant building, you guys are just storing stuff or whatever. So again, I guess I just issue a word of caution that, why are we looking at this? What's the purpose? And to have somebody register their building. I mean, what's the end result? What are we looking for? If it's to take care of their building, we have the property maintenance code that we could probably go after them that way. So, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just trying to think, what are we trying to accomplish with this? And I don't know, because we haven't had this discussion, Your Honor, or anybody else. I wasn't in on the meetings here, so that's just my first impression.
And I think being on that committee also myself, I think Brad kind of hit it, that this is to encourage people who just have buildings just sitting around to either make use of it or sell it. I think that's where the business improvement committees come from. We don't like just buildings and they're talking basically in the downtown area. That a big or a small vacant building. It just would be nice to put that building to use rather than just sitting there for 10 years with the windows dirty. So I think Brad hit it, that this is an encouragement to have that property owner do something.
I'd be interested in hearing from some of those cities as to whether. And just briefly doing some research, it looks like some of them are fairly new, you know, they've been adopted within the last 2 to 3 years. I'd be curious to hear from Mason City or Nevada, and see, you know, if they've had any success with the ordinance, or has it been, you know, another administrative task for staff that hasn't had the returns they hoped for.
Yep.
Be good to get some feedback.
Yeah, I guess those were some of my thoughts, you know, at first, like, oh yeah, do something about vacant buildings, you know, it sounds great, but then I was like, what do we already have in place? And why is that, why would that not be sufficient? Like, what is this extra, what would the extra layer be doing that we don't already have the leverage to do? You know, I mean, yeah, like you said, Hugh, it's that balance between where is our governance, really, where does it need to be, so.
And if it's a $25 charge and I have a vacant building in town, is that really going to push me to sell it or put a business in it? You know, I'll register it every year for $25. You know, and I'm not trying to be devil's advocate here. I'm just saying, you know, I just always, one of the things I try to tell code department is when you go and speak to somebody, you go and speak with them. If they pay a $25 fee to have their roof inspected for the building permit, we dang well better be out inspecting that roof. So they're not paying their fee for nothing. You're going out there because you're making sure it's done right. So they're gonna be at every one. So there's a reason for that building, for that fee they're paying, for that building inspection, for that permit fee. So and if, you know, I'm not against this. I'm just telling you, this is my first impression of this, and I haven't had any further discussion, so. Well, I just don't want it to be something that we're just doing to go through the motions.
Well, I look at it, just looking at the, you know, the purpose and intent that it shows in it. And, this probably was just recently happened, you know, to prevent vacant properties from becoming fire hazards. We just had a situation, you know, with what I would call a vacant property, and I can't speak to exactly what caused the fire, but it seems like with some type of program in place of, you know, vacant, where they, you know, maybe even they pay a fee, you know, I was probably making a little bit more than $25, maybe $100 or something that would at least cover the cost of somebody getting in there and inspecting that vacant property every year, just to make sure that you don't have hazards like fire hazards or something like that can affect another business right next to it, because you just have a property that sits there vacant and, you know, the owner doesn't really want to do anything with it. And lo and behold, you have an electrical fire or something that happens and it damages other businesses around. And I think, you know, it probably could have been prevented if we had a program in place, like, you know, something like this. You know, we can own it and make it a little bit more specific, but I believe that would be one of the more of the positives of it, you know, keeping vacant properties from, you know, becoming hazards. And also, like you said, as they sit, keeping them from becoming visual blight as well. If somebody's going in every year, taking a look at it, making sure everything is safe, making sure the electrical, you know, there's not a whole lot of stuff sitting around that'll cause, if a spark happens, it'll cause a huge 5-alarm fire with the rest of the buildings along the street. I think that's something that we should have in place.
I'd like to ask some clarifying questions. Does our city have annual fire code inspections on every business? Is that a requirement? Do businesses have to have insurance?
That's one word.
And then the last one is you talked about our code, and I guess we need to compare them side by side, obviously. I know we all discussed this, but if I'm interested to know for sure the code covers everything. Because there's some great ideas in here.
Right. I don't know if it covers all of them.
Yeah.
And it's, I didn't read them all, to be honest with you. I glanced through some were residential. I sort of just glazed over those. I don't know how many of them actually allow for city officials to go in and do inspections in them. Like Bill was talking about, so I'm not even sure about that. Things I do think are very positive that we don't have currently, if you look at Mason Cities, see there on the first page, lighting plan for the exterior building the property. So is that gonna help deter vagrancy? Is that gonna help deter, you know, criminal mischief and everything else? Yeah, so that'd be great. I mean, you know, there's stuff like that, that if it's something, and Brad, I think is a little hesitant just because some of this isn't court tested. When a new ordinance comes out anywhere, they get court tested, and so normally, you know, you wait until that happens, but everybody sort of came out with this one at once, it sounds like. There's certainly definitely positive in here. So I'm not saying that.
Yeah, when I looked at some of the proposals, you know, I would agree. I think a side-by-side comparison would be good. You know, and I also, I noticed the exterior lighting as well. And then on the one they've proposed, they also said, 'cause you said it, Mayor, you said you guys were kind of thinking about the Main Street area. And one like simple thing is no papered or blocked first floor windows facing Main Street. To me, that's not so much about, like, it is about vacant buildings, but it's also just about beautification of Main Street. And maybe that doesn't need to fall into this particular section of the code, but maybe there's something else. So I think that there's elements of this that we just have to figure out. Are they covered? And if they're not, where should they be placed? Because maybe it's not a whole nother administrative level that's needed, but they just need to be somewhere else.
I concur with your thoughts, Lee, but at the end of the day, what did we gaining or protecting by developing? We have a very, I view downtown as a very beautiful old downtown district. We have a lot of nice buildings, a lot of nice businesses, but we also have empty businesses, very old buildings, and the roofs are. You know, we had that discussion during last budget season about look at roofs, we just do our standard sod thing, you know, or put money toward roofs and stuff like that. I guess I'm a little bit confused, so the staff hasn't even looked at it yet. Really?
No, I have looked at it, and you're providing the packet, and then we got the ordinance, yesterday. But we have a weekly meeting every Thursday, we haven't, you know, talked about this on a staff level, is this something that we haven't explored it, we haven't researched it, other than reviewing the material that's in the packet.
I think this is just an opportunity for the Business Improvement Committee to present their case, and Dean, you wanna speak to that?
Is it appropriate? The Walter?
Your chief remarks. It's always good to have.
Sure.
We do want to clarify that this is not aimed at residential. So this is strictly commercial and industrial that we're talking about. And it's not intended to punish everybody. There's a lot of ways to get out of that. I mean, it's only if you're not doing anything real. I mean, if it's just sitting there, and you know, we've had some that have sat there, nothing's happening, there is no plan. So the middle bullet point here, encourage property owners to repair, reuse, or redevelop vacant properties, creating more turnkey opportunities for businesses. It's to encourage them to do something. If they can't do it or not gonna do it themselves, we're gonna encourage them, well, here's another incentive to sell it to somebody who will. Or work a little harder to get somebody to do that. So all they gotta do is make a little effort to do it. And they're out of, and the fines too, when we're talking between, it's proposed to be here for $250 to $1,000, depending on how many years it goes. So yeah, a little more, it's not on risk, but again, it's kind of a people in the pants to say, hey, let's look at doing something, because this is hurting us. But that says we're trying to sell this community, and the longer that sits there, the bigger an issue becomes, and the more our residents kind of lose hope, little hope and joy. We go up there, you said nothing's ever happened. So this is intended to start the discussion.
Would this be something that truly should be laid on the city to do?
I think it's a partnership.
I'm just thinking, you know, I mean, at some point, there's, in my mind anyway, I'm a real farm kid, but at some point, there's a real fine tipping point where you're starting to you know, get into, okay, well, you're gonna help this business over here, this building over here, but you're not gonna help the rest of these buildings over here. Those owners are doing what they're supposed to do. They're taking care of the property. They're keeping it occupied. I mean, the reason you should own a property is to get a return from it. If these people don't care about getting a return from it and it's just sitting there, at what point, you know, I guess I'm a bit confused at where the city starts and stops in this whole thing. I get what you're trying to get at. I'm just, is the city the right place for this initiative? Maybe that doesn't make sense to anybody else.
Yeah, what would be your?
It's a
what's your
slippery
alternative?
slope. I don't know, the chamber, you form another group here, you know, is this an ADC thing? Is there another group out there that takes this initial step before it truly gets to?
I think that's what they have done.
Okay, but I'm just saying, should it be pitched to ADC? Is it a chamber? Is this something the chamber should take care of rather than the city?
I mean, ADC, Chamber, and Main Street. Main Street is making the proposal.
Okay. Is
So
it
why,
something-
so Main Street's not gonna push it onto the Chamber or push it onto ADC. This is their proposal to the city.
Okay, I'm just asking.
But what
should it-
what
should
can
it
they do,
be-
what can they do other than say, can we have a vacant building ordinance? They can't propose rules and regulations.
Yeah.
We have talked about ways that we.
I mean, if you have another option, but they can't make rules.
Is it truly to that point where the city should have rules and regulations?
That's the question, I guess. That's what they're proposing.
And that's what I'm asking right now.
They think it
Is it
is.
just
I think.
good for them? I'm not sure I'm there yet. That's all I'm trying to throw
And
out.
that's, all I'm saying is, they think it is, that's what they brought to us for discussion.
Right.
We can have the discussion, say, no, I don't think it is, but that's, you know, you say somebody else needs to start it, they've started it.
Yeah, and I think it is too. I do believe it. It's at that point. I believe it's been at that point for a while. You know, when I campaigned to join the city council, one of my main themes was, making Main Street vibrant again. We have 6 or 7 buildings sitting empty. And the owners are just sitting on them. They don't even want to make a move to try to improve and get Main Street going again. So I believe it is. Like I said, I didn't believe that we didn't even have an ordinance in place to cover, like even something as simple as fire inspections. You know, something that simple, that they don't even have to have insurance. So if they do have a fire in their vacant building and it destroys all of the property around it, they don't even have insurance to cover it. I think that we do need to have some type of ordinance in place to cover these these basic issues, at least a basic ordinance. Where they have to have the fire inspection come in. How other properties, VFW, different places, we have to have a fire inspection every year when we're active. Why shouldn't they have to have a fire inspection in that vacant building? It's more likely to have a fire in a vacant building than an operating building because somebody's there every day and keeping an eye on it. You got a vacant building, things sitting in there. It may be more likely to have a fire situation because nobody's looked at you may have ropes come in chewing on electrical wiring and it could cause a fire to happen, or just several different things. I believe we are, I'd like to say, in my opinion, I believe we are there. We do need to address this.
So I do think there are things that need to be addressed. I think that before, like, we can talk in circles for another hour on this if we want. I think what we need to be able to see, I think city staff is gonna need some time to look at this and to address this. And then, as Krista mentioned, like a side-by-side comparison, what do we already have leverage within our current ordinance to be able to do with existing property owners? Like, do you have insurance? What do we have leverage to do with a vacant building? And then we can start looking at what do we need to add? Maybe it's not a whole nother system that requires like another layer, but maybe it's additions to current ordinance or code. But until we have that comparison, I think we're just gonna talk ourselves blue in the face without knowing where we are and what we can do to use what we have to get to where we think we need to be. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think that's the reason why they brought it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can decide, yes, we know, at this point now, yeah, there's a lot of particulars we gotta work out, but we have to make the decision on whether or not we even want to do anything. And I believe we need to do something.
Yeah, and I think the next step is still just more information. They've brought us what other cities are doing and some ideas for what they would like to see included in what we need to do. But if there's existing ordinances, we need to see that instead of, like, we have their information. Excellent. I appreciate you guys putting it together. And I think we need to go from here.
My only comment would be. If I was you, I would say. Yeah. Or if I read in there, but it says you're gonna list it on an MLS with a filter. Tell people what to do with, how to do it, with their property, and who they're gonna do it with. We don't tie people together, do we? Can't tie things.
No, we were gonna do this, it would be something we would draft.
Yeah, and so I think it goes back to the last comment, and I'll be really brief. One of the really big things different with commercial is zero setback. Close lot line, proximity, parking. Residential use, multi-business use, what do you have in your building? Is it vacant? We got buildings dropping stuff on the sidewalk. Do we all agree? Okay, whether it's a cornice or a chunk coming above a window.
Or either.
That's why we're doing it.
Yep.
So when I read through this, I grade some of you. If I'm a legal conforming user, a B3, R1, pick whatever you want. That's okay. You're not. So you got people living upstairs on Main Street, go knock on the door, go look at the lights. They don't have occupancy. Okay, not everybody, some do, some don't. Well, that's where everybody's touching each other. In 3 weeks ago, right? They're touching each other. Union House across the street, that's really Chicago fire, 1817, right? I think it was. Everybody's hooked up real tight. And so the buildings that are vacant are just like we talked about in the neighborhood. Socio-demographic, mental, physical, whatever's creating this acute neglect is the point. Kind of acute neglect. And so we're trying to get ahead of it just in the last, and I'll stop. In minutes, you can take a circle around Charles City, total up about 60,000 vacant square feet that either is or gonna be vacant really soon. That has changed. And a lot of that change has been sitting. Some of those things that have sat have had negative things happen to it. And so it's hopefully to kind of get ahead of it a little bit and say, you got people living upstairs. My business is next door, and they're cooking. Get the air fryer out, deep fry whatever you want, and they're upstairs. No firewalls, no burn throughs, they're not there. That's kind of where we're at. Neglect and that kind of thing, the nuisance, the private enjoyment, peaceful enjoyment. And so I don't like limiting people's use of their real estate a whole lot, as long as it conforms to code. And there's some things that are tipping on our main street and our business environment that are making it really hard to take care of them. So if we can get ahead of that with like your chunks that fall on the sidewalk, well, let's get after it and get the chunks out and nurture them to take care of it with, don't know what that all looks like, but it's happening on. Yeah, so we're just trying to be advocates to get it, not ahead of it, but alongside it.
The intent is not to drop this and dump it on the city. Yeah, but take care of it. The intent is to start the discussion. It's like, okay, and like I said, it's gotta be a partnership. There's things that we can do to assist, there's things the chamber can do to assist. But again, without the city involvement, without an ordinance or with something with a little more teeth into it. What good is it? So, no, is this a approved total or throw out the window? No, let's start the discussion. Let's see, are we doing some things and we just need to look at how to better enforce or get help enforcing? There's some ideas in here that we can take advantage of, but these buildings are sitting too, like I said, they're sitting too long. We've seen the impact recent fire had on that entire block. So it's not just affecting one property, it's affecting that entire block. So at what point do we say we gotta do something? So this is intended to start the discussion.
Thank you. So we will, like Brad says, this is not gonna even discuss on the staff level, because like Mark said, this is just to kind of bring it. So I think the next step is to have staff review, and whether that's 2 days or 2 months, whatever, and then come back with a discussion of what the staff recommendation is on this.
My biggest question is just getting feedback from the communities who've adopted it and to see whether it's been effective in accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and one more thing, and this is fairly new to a lot of communities, but this is also something Main Street Iowa has been backing and promoting communities to take notes in. And they realize it's not one size fits all. So every community is different, but it's not, this is just not a Charles City.
All right, thanks, Mark, and everyone. Let's go on to number 7, discuss Union Place purchase agreement amendment. Gonna get off the seat, are you?
Yes. Nothing to do with that.
Brad, you wanna take that?
Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. Bloomfield drafted the purchase agreement to acquire the city property out by the hospital. And it was conditioned on them receiving, state tax credits, which were recently approved. And they had the purchase agreement prepared so that their due diligence period ran concurrently with waiting on the tax credits. Not sure why they had it set up that way, but now they have the tax credits, now they actually wanna spend the money to do their due diligence. So they're just asking for an extension of that due diligence period until March 2nd, 2026. And then assuming that everything comes back satisfactory, we would close within 30 days of the end of that due diligence period. Without extending that, their due diligence period has expired or is expiring here shortly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a reasonable request, and so that will be coming forth then on our next meeting, probably. Yep.
And that amendment is at the way bottom, sorry, I put the
No.
main purchase agreement first, or the approved, and then the amendment is at the.
Yep.
Sorry,
Gary.
sorry, Patrick, keep scrolling.
See where her marker is, after you get here's that.
Okay, I see it there. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys,
No, it's fine.
Page 15.
yes.
All right, well, Patrick's looking. Let's move on to 2025 storm sewer improvement project.
So since John's on vacation, he
Mayor,
has-
Mayor, before we move on, can I comment on that last thing?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
I know they said it was pretty, Brett said it was pretty straightforward, but I was looking at it today and I took it up to somebody else, had them give me their opinion on it. The due diligence for the property on page 1, where it says that, the following ends on August 31st, or 10 days after the Iowa Economic Development, announcement. And that was more than 10 days ago. And on page 8, section 4.1, if the developer breaches stuff that fails, this river city's sole and exclusive remedy will be to terminate this agreement by written notice, and then it goes on. So the way I thought this was, and the person I ran it by today agreed, was that this is basically dead and you can't do an extension. You'd have to go back to the starting over and have public hearings and everything again as a new sale.
I disagree with that. They're not in default. And the city can amend that purchase agreement by mutual agreement of the parties. That's my opinion.
When does any, changes have to be made before they defaulted on the 10 days?
It's not an event of default, it's simply that they're asking for an extension of their due diligence period. I don't think they've defaulted under the terms of the agreement.
Okay, section 1.1. If really is clear on the agreement, on the dates. Section 4.1 is very clear on defaulting.
I'm not following you.
Okay. It had to be done by August 31st or 10 days after the announcement, right? That's what it says on the first page, section 1.1.
Not in default of the terms of the agreement. We can extend that due diligence period by mutual agreement of the parties. That's my opinion.
You could have before it expired, right?
I disagree with that. I think that we have the ability to extend that due diligence period by mutual agreement.
Okay.
There's been no formal action by the city to declare them in default. There's been nothing to terminate the agreement. The agreement's still in effect unless the parties take action to terminate it. And the city simply agreeing with the developer to extend that due diligence period.
What does city's sole and exclusive remedy mean?
Again, the city would have to take action to terminate the agreement. It hasn't taken any action to terminate the agreement or to declare them in default.
But doesn't this kind of say that an extension isn't even an option? Because sole and exclusive remedy.
No, in my opinion, no. There's not an event of default that would trigger the city to move forward with terminating the agreement. I mean, one of the parties would have to take affirmative action to terminate the agreement. We're agreeing to amend the purchase agreement by extending the due diligence period.
So the request to extend their due diligence period is not something that makes them in default in this agreement. It's just, it's separate from putting them in default.
Yeah, I don't
It's
think
just
that
an
the failure to
extension.
complete their due diligence period by a specified date puts them in default. Even if it did, the city would have to then say, you're in default of the agreement, we want to terminate it.
Mhm.
Which it'd be up to the city or the parties to terminate the agreement.
But isn't that what is said that you would do in 4.1?
If there's a default or breach, then it provides the city with the option to move forward with a termination. It would have to take affirmative action to terminate the agreement.
Okay, we'll see. Thank you.
Other comments before we move on?
So, like I said, John couldn't make it. He was gonna try to remote in, but wasn't gonna work out, so he asked me to handle it. And he's got a very extensive AIS, and so I'm not gonna go through that, kind of try to summarize that. Essentially, 4 problem areas, drainage problem areas that need to be addressed with some a new storm sewer project. First at the corner block of 17th Avenue, second alley between Milwaukee and Harwood, 900 block of Holland, 808 North Main Street, and the cul-de-sac at the end of Park Lane Drive. And they all have in common that they're drainage issues, for different reasons, water sitting around. In some cases, like the alley, it's causing problems with our alley. And he put together for you, a first look for you guys to look at this project he's put together. And it's partly because we aren't gonna have another planning session because of the way the meetings fall. In order to get this lit, he needs to get it going, so we wanted to bring it up tonight.
So we would then have where did I read that? Information that October sixth, city council meeting on the preliminary plans and to set the public hearing date. So that would just be setting the public hearing date. There would still be a lot more.
Yeah, you have
Comments.
several more times to take a look at it. He just wanted to get it on
Get
here
it started.
late early and get it started, so we could he'd be ready to set the public hearing on the sixth.
Yeah.
Are some of the areas that we've talked about before with water issues?
Yeah, no, they are not bad. I know we've talked about drainage issues.
Yeah, I think at least a couple of them
Yeah,
that address
could be.
clicks with me. I don't know about four, but at least a couple of them.
I thought the same thing, that some of these have come up before, so I just thought, well, this is what we talked about addressing, so. Well,
Yes, I think, like I said, this is mainly just a timing thing. We wanted to make sure that we were aware this was coming up on the October sixth meeting, and like I said, that will just start the process of the public hearings and all that, and so we'll have more time for discussion, but I think John just wanted to make sure that we could get started on it.
Yeah.
Is that your understanding, Dan?
Yes. Yeah, that was, and because of, it has to go out to bid and all that stuff, he wants to get it going, so.
And if you, to the Lane's point, I know we discussed the Park Lane at least once before the North Main one, so it is. And I found that a little curious with the reconstruction up there, but then you have the demolition building there and so ground settles out, so now how does that look? How's the water settling in there? See where we can come back with that one.
So everyone's okay with that being proposed on the October sixth, and then I talked, obviously, time for discussion then again, but I think you just want to get it in the get it in the queue, as they said.
Yeah.
Okay,
Park Lane is an interesting one, because I've lived here 19 years. And there's always water from February to November running down.
there's some places in my neighborhood, there's always water running on the street. I think there's some springs or whatever. All right, so the next question becomes, I'm gonna propose, I know this group doesn't like to meet more than 2 hours, we're now at 2.5. So next item, that could be a long discussion point, do you want to continue, or do you want to put that on the next planning session?
They're here. Yep.
I mean, I don't care. All I've heard is before, man, Mayor, you let that meeting go for a long time, so I'm giving you the option.
I knew,
But yeah, I don't have a problem staying.
I knew it'd be a long meeting.
Well, and I think
Be fun with it.
if you look at this, it's pretty simple because it's just like the other ones you already have, except for it's in a different TIF district.
Well, that's not in the, that's part of the discussion. It's not all in a TIF district. That's that's part of the discussion, but if you wanna go ahead, that's fine. Mark, you wanna present? Oh, so you are gonna leave.
We'll leave in about 5 minutes. here.
Okay, all right. Break time. Anybody else needs a break?
Yeah. Right.
I gave him an option, didn't I, Krista?
Yeah. We can. Right.
This is just a first look, like we both reviewed it.
I think this is the south, some say southwest, so there's
That's what you told me.
no, it's the south.
Disgusting.
It said southwest of Richmond, it's not southwest, it's somewhere. Yes, the southwest, because that's why I said, it says southwest of bypass, this is not the southwest bypass.
That's
This is
just
South
a,
Green.
that's just a typo in the AI. Because see, in this, it says South Grand Urban.
Yeah, I'll say it, so they've updated.
Well, no, it says establish the Southwest bypass and the South Grand.
Yeah, and that's okay too, but this one just says southwest.
Yeah, and that's just a typo in there.
Because that's what.
So because it said this, and remember we
Yeah,
added
yeah.
this.
Yeah, this, they don't see this, because this is on the AIS, it just says south.
I don't know, but if they scroll up, they will see it. Yeah,
Oh, they look.
keep scrolling. Yeah, because these are the edits that you and I went through.
Yeah, that's why, as I looked at that, I thought, well, wait a minute, that was not those edits we talked. But I didn't look further into
It
the
does.
actual one, I just looked at the AIS.
Yeah.
The agenda item summary. Okay, that's.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah, just the TIF districts are wrong in the AIS, but they're correct in the support agreement. So,
Right here, whereas, that's just southwest.
and it has,
Southwest bypass and the southwest bypass.
oh, I must have uploaded the wrong one. That's my fault.
Actually, that's why this discussion may take a while, but everybody wants to hang around and have fun.
Yeah.
Have a call.
The only other, that's the
Only other thing I'm doing is breathing.
Is that?
You're white.
It says it, well, it's added in this.
That's big, it's just
Because
easy to
this
say.
They updated, and it says, cities established the south.
From the south.
And the south. And then we changed this because this doesn't. It's funding the grant, not. Technically.
Yeah, cause I don't know, I don't like that word administering either, we're not
Well-
gonna pay them any money
But that's how we have to get this to do it.
that's. That fell off way long ago.
Well, that's why, like, none of this is gonna, this is just your first look to come in and discuss, like, there's lots of work to see.
There's lots of work to be done on this stuff.
Where's flat grass or anything?
I uploaded the wrong one, you guys. It says the Economic Development Support Agreement, when you scroll down, it says Southwest, under the first whereas, it says Southwest and Southwest. The updated one says Southwest and South Grand. But everything else is what the updated one says. And this is just on here for your review and discussion, like I just said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to this agreement, since it is a unique program.
Everybody back?
My office.
So this was the proposal that we talked about earlier on to provide some economic development support to businesses. We have the facade and the culture entertainment district in the downtown Riverside TIF district. It was discussed that we should maybe be providing some assistance to people outside of that TIF district, so that's kind of where this came from. This would be through the chamber. It does. Brittany said it says here southwest and southwest, but we are talking about the southwest TIF district and the South Grand TIF district. Some of these businesses are not in either one of those TIF districts, so I think that has to be clarified in here too, such as Jeff Otto's business is not in either one of those TIF districts, but this is meant to include those businesses also. So that would be city funding that does not come from a TIF district. So I think there's some things to be discussed in here before we have a final agreement, but with that being said, Mark, do you want to make any comments?
Just so we hear all the time from business outside the downtown district saying, what about us? And what's available for us? And again, the facade grant program, the culture entertainment district grant program will be very, very successful, but it has to be within the Riverside TIF district that's what funds it. So as long as there's funding mechanism, and Main Street oversees that for the city, because it's in the downtown district. You're not able to administer that outside of the downtown district, so that's why the chamber can do basically the same thing for anything inside the city limits. But outside the downtown district.
If you scroll way down to page 6 on this, it says, eligible area, commercial properties within the city limits of Trail City and outside of the Riverside tax increment district. Applicants that do not own the property must have written consent from the building owner prior to grant approval. So that's another thing to look at.
Didn't that say both districts?
That's
Districts in it.
right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have a lot of discussion and review to do to this, so.
But like I say, some of it is also not even in a TIF.
And for that, you'll have to put something in your regular budget to cover that. because- So that's something,
And that's a question, is that something we want to do? Because I hate to say TIFs are a funding source, but it is a funding source of this program in the downtown. And if we have a business that's not in a TIF district, the city's just gonna be giving them money out of our general fund.
The other option is to extend the TIF district if it's next to it. With all the hoops that go with that.
Yeah, we have extended TIF districts before for whatever reasons.
Now, isn't that a change though, that if you expanded, that portion that's expanded's got a white on it?
Just expanded.
The expansion, that's
Not
right,
that-
exactly. But, and just Riverside is a perpetual and South Grand is the.
We were discussing that the other day, we couldn't remember which was which.
I think it is. Art, you know?
Riverside's perpetual, I don't know about some.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I was thinking.
One, I thought one of them
Southwest, not bad.
was. Maybe Southwest is.
Yeah, but not South Grand.
Southwest is.
Yeah,
I think one
Southwest.
is or one or
Southwest is, and that's why we did not dissolve.
Right, right. But I was thinking it's.
I don't think both of the Souths on it.
No,
One is.
I don't think
Southwest is.
Southwest
South
is and
not.
South Grand has
It's been too long since.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I guess this is just kind of starting this again, starting the discussion, because some of the things that are on here for eligible projects are different than what we fund in the facade grants. Because it talks about electrical, plumbing and HVAC improvements. You can't do that in the downtown district.
Yeah.
Energy efficiency enhancements, you can't do that. So I think if we're gonna do this for both, we're trying to make it fair.
Yeah.
Criteria has to be the same also.
I would
I would
agree.
agree with that.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that, I think that that would just be best practice, because otherwise we'll be asked to expand,
Yeah,
you know. what
change
we
the
can do.
downtown one.
And I'm not saying these would be bad things to be able to do, but I think until we know how the program is gonna work and, how, you know, I would like to see them sort of match in what the eligible projects are. And if we ever decide to change one, then we change the other.
I agree.
But you're somewhat limited on what you can change with the downtown, right?
Say again?
You're somewhat limited on what you can change with the downtown one, because that's kind of run by the Main Street program. Is that not correct?
No, Main Street administers for the city. So it's the city set those, the criteria, it doesn't enter.
So we can change the criteria for.
Downtown.
I thought that it's governed by the Main Street.
What's governed is if Main Street funding programs have to be within their designated Main Street district, the downtown district, which is not exactly the same as the Riverside TIF district.
Right,
So
right.
again, you gotta be careful when you say building or businesses outside of Riverside TIF aren't eligible, because there's some businesses that are outside, they're included in the Riverside TIF district, but are not in the designated downtown
Yeah.
district.
I think that needs, I noticed that too, that needs to be clarified in here too. Are we talking about the Riverside TIF or are we talking about the downtown district? They're different.
Would it be, do we have, I feel like we've seen this before, but maybe the next time we talk about this, could we have a map that overlays all of these different districts, like?
I haven't.
We do.
Yeah.
Well,
I was gonna say, I
just
feel
have
like
to say,
we've seen it
Riverside.
before.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
So we're working on getting that put into our integrity, like GIS mapping too. I talked to Corey about that a few months ago when I was going through this. I'm like, I need something where I can click and overlay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was gonna work that up and he thought it would be at minimal cost to have them add that, so.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because that would also help us get a better picture of what or how many businesses are not included in any of these districts, to know, like, if we think about expanding one, is there one that makes sense to expand based on where these businesses are?
You're going. Give you a real quick example of 500 grand
Mhm.
TLC. That
It's,
is outside the Riverside TIF district.
right,
We amended our downtown district to include it,
right.
so it's eligible for Main Street funding, but it's not eligible for the Riverside TIF funding.
So I guess. I don't know, you need to tighten this up, we need to tighten it up, if we work together to tighten it up and then come back with a revised proposal. I think
I
everybody.
sent you a framework, and that's, you guys determine what you want to include, not include, and we'll make it work. You know, you've got something to work with there, and it's up to you whether how you want to tighten it up. But we have the mechanism in place. I can tell you, I've already had 3 businesses ask about this.
That's,
So
yeah,
what
that's
could I
where I
apply?
was. that's why I sent this off to Dorsey and we're trying to hurry this along. Not that it's hurried along, but I mean, trying to get this moving, cause I know you have. But
So maybe Brad, this is something we can
Business-
talk at the
this is
Brad
what you
meeting
said.
about.
right, business incentive fund proposal.
Yes.
And that's what Dorsey used to put this all together.
Sure.
So, and it's the same as what's your exhibit A in your packet.
And it's based partly out of what we're doing downtown, but also based partly on discussions that the council had while this whole thing was being put together. So yeah, it's up to you to decide what you want to include, what you don't want to include. It doesn't have to be exact match to what's downtown, but that's up to you.
I think I'd rather it have an exact match.
Yeah.
But I know we were talking about the roof repairs in the downtown, adding that to
Yep.
the downtown.
On a
So-
limited basis.
Yeah, on a
You
limited
could have
basis.
two road projects that wipe out the fund.
Exactly.
That's capped at $4,000.
That 4,000, yeah.
Yeah, this program would be capped at maximum 8,000 per project. The one downtown is 10,000 because it's a bigger pot right now.
Yeah.
It's an established fund.
Yeah.
So this is just starting.
Yeah.
I think you put 20,000 to start.
Yep.
So it may sound like a lot, that won't go very far.
Yeah, I think for projects, basically a copy and paste to downtown. And then maybe, like you mentioned, we need to discuss roof repairs and how that would look if we wanted to include that in either one of these. I do like, the funding structure set up, that 8,000 is the cap on this one. Because it is a newer program, just gonna see how it's gonna be managed. But. I don't know.
My main concern with this one, and I won't have to worry about it much longer, but it's gonna be, budget constraints. As the overall budget gets tighter, and you're.
Well, it's this and the facade, I mean.
Right, no,
Yeah, it's all.
Mark, I had the conversation with Mark at one time, is it still justifiable to keep the Main Street program going? Is that even, truly viable, so.
That was my big question for this one too, like, are we offering something that in the future is gonna be much more difficult to sustain, cause I think it's a lot harder to back out of a program that people have become used to.
Yeah.
So that's,
I mean, I'm not trying to
yeah,
be a naysayer, but I mean, it's just something everybody's gotta keep in the back of their head. None of the budget stuff has gotten any easier though, that's 10-15%.
I think the other things are, kind of simple fixes, it's that annual budget funded by the city that we have to figure out.
For the ones in the TIF districts, you have money coming in to fund those, but the ones outside,
Right.
we don't.
Still basically it's basically tax money, but it's just a different bucket.
That's all.
And there are additional expenses that go with it, when you start getting Dorsey involved in preparing these things, you gotta do the amendment to the. Yeah, to the district and all that stuff, there's a fair amount of time and expense that goes into. Every one of these.
Yeah, about $6,000 per tip.
Yeah,
From Dorsey.
per year.
Cheryl's encouraging improvements to go instead of increasing the regulations.
Right.
All right, any other discussion?
Thanks for your work on that, Mark.
Dana, you report from you tonight.
Sure, I attended the Housing Task Force meeting, it was very interesting to me, I hadn't seen anything quite like that anywhere, I think that's a really good idea, that it's probably why you're getting a lot of these housing that you're getting that other places aren't, I think that's a really good thing. I'm also I'm trying to put a bunch of the files that took me forever to find in a folder special to make it easier to find for the next person to come in.
Mark. So you can't go out that way.
Oh, no.
You're just going to the trash, okay.
To make that
We
easier.
already had to reprimand one person tonight, so.
Trust me, I'm part right there, I'm not.
Make some of that stuff easier to find and, I just made copies of the files and put them in that folder and they all live somewhere else, but I'm explaining that and then I'm putting together, I have been for a while. As I think of things, I'm writing them down, things that I learned that, oh, I'm supposed to do that, so then I go in and put that down, so hopefully it'll be easier for the next person that comes in here in a month or so. But that's about all I have tonight.
Okay.
Can I go back on something real quick? Here is housing.
Yes.
I don't know whether Ryan's still with us, but the point he made, I think, was that by not completing their due diligence by the period set forth in the agreement, they were in default or did not perform. Even if you accept that as being true, the agreement says the city's remedying that situation is to provide them a written notice that they're in default and terminating the agreement. So in order for the city to do that, it would have to take affirmative action to terminate the agreement, which is what I was trying to explain to Ryan, that it doesn't just automatically terminate because they fail to perform a provision of the agreement. It gives the city the option to take affirmative action to terminate the agreement. The city's not required to do that. The agreement doesn't automatically terminate. So that's what I was trying to explain to Ryan, but as I had a chance to review that again after we ended the discussion, I just wanted to reiterate that the agreement does not automatically terminate. It would require affirmative action by the city. And I don't think the amendment is something that requires, further notice or further public hearing. But I will raise that with Kading and say, hey, this was raised in the planning session. I don't think you need to go through further public hearing, but you should run that by your attorney and make sure he agrees with that, because there's certainly time to do that before they get started on the project. And I'd rather do that on the front end than deal with it,
On the back end.
yeah, on the back end. So I'll raise that with them and make sure their attorney is aware of that issue and that he agrees with my analysis on that.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks for the clarification.
I knew that was kind of sprung right on you.
My computer's dying, I'm trying to read the agreement.
Yeah, so good. I appreciate you making that comment, Brad, and you'll obviously follow up with us when you find out more information. Brittany, anything for you tonight?
Just that Friday night is our city administrator reception from 5:30 to 7. And then we'll have our interviews starting on Saturday morning at 9 AM. Dean and I are gonna go through and there'll be 3 groups, so we'll let the first group who doesn't have an interview know that they can come a little later, like they can come at 9:45 instead of 8:45. And go that route. And then after, when everybody leaves, we'll go into closed session for those discussions, so that will be a special meeting and agenda will be. Our next regular meeting is October 6th. So that's what I have.
In that location is the Art Center.
Art Center is
Friday
the
night?
reception
Friday
Friday
night.
night, and then it's here in the Zastro. We'll divide the Zastro room down the center here, and then the overflow for the break time will be the Mooney Gallery or out into the
Or
library.
wherever you're gonna go.
Yeah,
And, I didn't notice when you sent that email out about Saturday and everything. I didn't notice any breakdown of groups. How has that been decided yet?
Dean has been the
The
breakdown.
groups.
Who's in which groups?
Yes,
No,
okay.
we'll let you
He's
know.
been
When, I was just wondering, when you plan on letting us know, look,
We'll let you know before, so like I
8
say,
o'clock
if you're
Saturday.
in group 2 who doesn't have to be there right away,
Yeah.
let you know that.
Okay.
And I hope, yeah, that once the groups are out, the interview questions, you guys have seen those. But then you'll know what interview are too, but that's, so.
That's kind of what I was getting at. I was,
Yeah.
which set of questions?
Which group was
Some others.
questions?
Yeah.
It'll be last minute. We'll get it.
I'll just, I figure I'm gonna walk in that day and be told where to go. It's
Yeah.
good.
Here's the paper, go there.
Remind me, for this one, is it do we take turns asking the questions? Is that how they had it set up, or did we decide?
I don't think we decided, but I think they are proposing that they're gonna ask the question, but they haven't said that.
They have not said
I
that.
thought I asked and they said we go round robin.
This was,
That's the way I remember it too.
okay.
We'll
I felt like we asked.
Or like just overseeing, basically.
We'll clarify that, because I like it, the fact that we ask the questions, as opposed to them asking all the questions.
Yeah.
But we'll clarify that with
I'm pretty sure that's what Marquita said when she was here the last time, is that you take turn.
Because one of the public people that I got says, so am I doing the interview? And I said, no, you just have to listen. Well, now I'll tell him, yeah, you are doing part of it.
But no, well, I have lunches coming at like 11:45 for the noon lunch, and like the candidates will be released then, and then it'll be discussion time for everybody, so.
So how does that work? Is that session different than the interview session
There
as
will-
far as meeting announcement?
There's no agenda for the beginning, the agenda, well, I'm assuming we'll start it at noon,
Correct, for the closed
for the
session.
closed session.
Correct.
Nothing for the morning, and then we're just gonna put something out for Friday night, just a notice, correct?
Yeah, I'll help you put together,
I thought we'd chop it over tomorrow.
yeah, yep. Yep, yeah, we don't need to post anything regarding interviews because there's not a quorum present. And then when we are gonna have a quorum, we'll post an actual agenda and that'll be a formal meeting, a special meeting.
So while we're talking about it, is everybody gonna be at we're planning food for Friday night? Everybody gonna be there?
Yeah.
Spouses? Yes or no?
No,
No spouse for me.
no spouse.
Rob will probably come along, but I don't know for sure. I'll find out tonight and let you know.
I mean-
Unless you want me to leave him behind because he's a little.
He's a little rough around the edges.
It's a nice thing.
And there has been some public that has reached out to me and asked if they could come. The one candidate must have friends and family in the area that would like to stop in, and I mean, I can tell them.
Yeah, it's public.
And I said it's 5:30
Not
this
mine or not. There's other people that are not invited.
I don't know how we can stop that. I guess
Right.
I thought-
Technically, with all of us there, it's gonna be a public. Yeah, so anybody should. It's interesting, but.
Yeah, let's have to.
It's just
When the
been
food, when the food's gone, the
Yeah,
food's
so it's
gone.
not, it's not like.
It's not like a whole.
It's not a family reunion.
People that reached out and asked what time via email.
And I'll talk to the two of you. I didn't know what you wanted me there for this weekend. I assume I'll be there for the closed session.
That's what I was.
Yeah, I guess I think that would be your only,
Okay,
And
but you're certainly welcome to come Friday night if you'd like to. And like I say, everybody I've invited, I said, this is for you and your spouse, if you want to, if you don't want to.
Yeah.
I think we're planning on between 40 to 50.
that's plenty.
Yeah, that's correct.
Mhm.
By the time those people, I'll talk to the candidates and then try to find one of us to relay their
Mhm.
thoughts on and everything else. That'll be about enough people to talk to.
Yeah, and several, and all, a lot of those people are the people who are gonna be here on Saturday also. There's probably only 10 community members, other than the interview group. All right. Any board commissioner committee reports? Hearing none, we will adjourn our meeting.